Two. Hello. Sorry to keep you waiting, folks. I'm here. I had to put a little gunk in my hair. It just needs a little gunk. I realize. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm here now. We got a big show, okay? Yum. Lennon, so good. Marina, what do you think of my haircut? I don't know if you can tell. It's kind of hard to tell because it's subtle, but it's a mullet. I got a slight mullet. Yeah, okay, we met. That's good. That was intentional, actually. That was intentional. You know, when you go to get your haircut, you show your picture of like a famous celeb. This is what I want to look like. And I show Marina, obviously. I speak for the entire chat when I say it's great and you should go longer. Well, it's going to grow in. It's going to be more outrageous as the weeks go on, so. Anyway, a little late getting started, but big show today. We got both Jeremy Appel and Duncan KENNEY coming on in just over an hour. Just a little over an hour. Jeremy Appel and Duncan KENNEY. We're talking more Parliament Nazi fallout. There's more news on this. They've been doing some journalism over at the Progress Report, talking about that, the whole like Alberta, all the huge connection with the University of Alberta and Hunka, this Nazi guy, and other Waffen SS veterans, and all this shit is now getting uncovered, and folks like Jeremy and Duncan are shining a light on it, despite the best efforts of people in our ruling class to cover it up as much as possible. So they're both coming on the show in like an hour. We're going to talk about this. Taking a quick lay down while home for lunch. That's good. Love a quick lay down. I actually had a quick lay down when the credits were playing there, the theme song. I'm sure some sort of brave compromise, like putting tarps over the Nazi statues, will suffice. I'm sure we're going to come to something like that. Yeah. I chugged a monster like that, I died. That was nothing. That was nothing. That was just a little sip. They'll put a statue to the victim next to the statues for Nazis. That way both sides are happy. I mean, listen, our ruling class is in a tough position right now with this, because they're all trying to move on, right? We said sorry, we apologized, the speaker resigned, that should be enough. Let's just move on. Or saying this stuff, fuck, do I want to get into this yet? You give me like 10 minutes to chit chat and then we're going to kick it off, okay? I have a whole thing ready to yell about this, but if we start now, we're going to be off to the races. Okay? Give me a few moments here just to warm my brain up. I'll chug my white monster here. I will warm up. Then we will talk about the Ukraine-Canada Nazi connection even more. Okay? Have we discussed Elon's changes to X, everything up, and how stupid they are. They are very stupid. White monster. That you're waiting to talk about the Nazi. Oh my. Of course, a friend of the stream, Juniper, was just suspended as well. That's bullshit. On the free speech platform, X everything up. Taking away headlines and the subtext in links, that's just phenomenally stupid. It really is. Like, it's just, there's no explanation for it. You look at any image now, you don't know whether it's an image or whether it's clickable. Nothing about it makes sense. If you don't have the exact headline in the fucking tweet, then there's just no way of knowing like what article you're clicking on is at all. Like, it's just stupid. And it's Hunger Games, it's really interesting actually. The way that like it seems like there's people from these banks and the people that are holding the purse strings here are starting to talk openly about like getting ready to pull their money or getting ready to force them out. The CEO said the big advertisers are coming back. Yes, sure they are. Sure they are. We just signed a big deal with Paris Hilton. We just signed a big deal with massive superstar Paris Hilton, which would have been really great for Twitter if it was the year 2004. Leaping Larry's Twitch account banned in South Korea. Do you have any countries where you can't speak? Not that I know of, Barbara. Not that I know of. Although my tweets often Germans get upset about them, and then they try to have them banned in Germany. So some of my commentary gets banned in Germany, I guess. I don't know. I don't understand how this shit works. The only good thing about new Twitter is that they allow community notes on ads. I do like that. It's very funny to chase away all the major advertisers and then fuck with the scam advertisers that you're left with. I think that's very funny. I think that's a funny bit, actually. I've got to, you don't have to hand it to Elon, but I think on that one you gotta doff your cap. He's made a lot of bad decisions, but I think that's pretty cool. Just shut down my Twitter account today. Done with it. Yeah, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm gonna try and outlast Elon. I'm counting on the fact that like if I stick around, eventually he's gonna get forced out, or he's gonna be forced to sell for pennies on the dollar, and then someone's gonna come back and just undo the changes that he did, and they're gonna come across like a big genius just for bringing back like Twitter and the bird and everything and tweeting and those kinds of things. I'm not fucking leaving. That's right. That's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it. I'm not going to give in, okay? I'm not going to give in. I'm staying where the people are. Like, that's where people follow me, you know? I think I just crossed 4K followers on Blue Sky. Like, that's nice, but I'm not going to build up 90K followers on another platform. Maybe this platform, maybe, because I put a lot of work into Twitch as well, but I'm not going to build up 90K followers on Threads. I'm not going to build up 90K followers on Blue Sky.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob
right.
to talk you through all this.
Slightly Tethered, thanks for 21 months, tier 1. Very much appreciated. Thank you. And honestly, even the whole thing about like if you get a certain number of impressions, like having equitable ad dollars for that, like that's something that would be appealing to me. Like I would even consider signing up for Twitter Blue or whatever it is, whatever it's called now, because like that would be, you know, if that was in effect in like 2018, 2019, I probably would have done pretty well. I still qualify for getting those kinds of like benefits, but there doesn't seem to be any like actual consistency. It's just who Elon likes and who he doesn't like. Some people get 5 million impressions a month and they make 5 cents, and then some people are getting big checks for 10K. Like there seems to be no actual consistency to it. If there was actually a thing that's like if you subscribe for Twitter and you get this many impressions, you'll get this much money, you know? If there was an actual system that it was in place, I would think about it. You know, why should I quit Twitter? He's the one that sucks. It's exactly that. It's the Michael Bolton thing from Office Space. And that's the thing. I'm not going to be blackmailed by the richest man in the world or the former richest man in the world to give him his $8. There's just not, he's just trying to like make it so people are forced to do that. And it's like, no, I'm not going to give in. I'm not going to give you the satisfaction. Twitter sucked before Elon took over. Now we all just blame him for everything and get indignant when people say it's time to leave. I mean, it did suck before. The idea that there was like fascists on there or conspiracy theories or bad stuff going on there before is like, of course it was. He has made it worse though. Two things can be true here. This is the dialectic. It's not like it was that great before. It was a pile of shit before, but it's definitely become more of a pile of shit since he took over. Even just with the basic functional changes to function that he's made is just bad, Even saying X, like just the fact that he's still saying like citizen journalists on X. It's like that's not what it's called, Elon. That is not what it's called. Like, let's be real here. X. The everything app. It's so stupid. Thoughts on Punk returning to WWE? Is he actually returning though, or is it still just a rumor? I hope he does. I hope he does. Whether you like him or not, he's undeniable in his ability to get people talking about a product and getting people to talk about him. And AEW should have done more to keep him around. He had a fantastic run in AEW. Jay, I know you don't agree, and that's fine. Not everyone agrees. His run in AEW was great, though. His return was so great. His feud with MJF. He did a lot of really good shit. His match with Eddie Kingston. He had a really great run, and I've talked before. I loved the Brawl Out promo. I thought it was fantastic. And I think for whatever reason, whether it's Tony Khan just doesn't have control of the locker room, or he allowed this kind of like animosity to develop, I just think there's no excuse for that. Like I was saying, the idea that at no point after he came back that there was any plans to have like a Punk angle with the Elite, with Omega, with the Bucks, with Hangman, it's just, that to me is inexcusable. And he's not blameless in that either, but like it's nuts to me that they just couldn't figure that out. Like they had millions of dollars on the table and they just said no thank you. No thank you. No thank you to those millions of dollars. No problem. And I don't know, like AEW needs big stars. Getting Edge, Adam Copeland is big, but like it's pretty rough seeing those like Dynamites and Collisions lately. Like the arenas are clearly like barely half full. Like it's not. There was a time, 2 years ago where it was really, really looking like a genuine competitor to WWE, and now it's just kind of looking like another sort of like low tier promotion, even if there's a really good roster and really good wrestling. Yeah, Jay, I guess it depends on whose like camp you're listening to, because there's stories to the contrary of that as well. Anyway, I think it would be fantastic for him to show back up in WWE. I think that would be awesome. I hope he does. Excuse me. And we talk about how border human rights violations have gotten worse under Biden, militarizing the border wall, trampling indigenous sovereignty, endangering migrants, destroying ecosystem. The lesser evil case was primarily campaigned around that. I agree. I mean, as we've talked about this on the podcast, the Insurgents podcast. We did a few months ago. We did an episode that focused on this, but all the ways that like these Trump era policies. First of all, you always had a barbaric, disastrous immigration policy, border situation in the United States. Obama made it worse. Trump made it even worse. And Biden has kept a lot of the most draconian Stephen Miller era border policies in place. And yeah, now going back to building the wall, deporting record numbers of people, like it's just it's horrific. And like you say, that's what they campaigned on. You know, they campaigned on like pro-immigrant, like we got to Trump, build the wall. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to separate kids. We're not going to put people in these camps. And all of that shit has continued. And you can draw distinctions with the Democrats and the Republicans about certain things about like social spending. Even that's on the fence. Certain things about like social issues, which is most often just based in rhetoric. But on a foreign policy level and on an immigration policy level, it's just identical, no matter who's in charge. It's always been this way, just all campaign promises. And again, there's a big lane for people that just want to do like anti the squad or anti Bernie stuff and to point out the hypocrisy. And like, I don't know how much value there is in that, but it's undeniable though that like AOC, for example, who was talking about these kids correctly talking about kids being put in these concentration camps and talking about these horrible human rights issues and doing photo shoots there and saying all kinds of important things about this. And then when it's Joe Biden and they're trying to play ball with the Democratic Party, saying like, oh, I think he's done a really good job. I think that's really fucked up. And it's like, you want to trust, if you want to believe in this idea of progressive people joining these big parties to change it from within, they've got to have fucking principles. Like we're seeing right now with Matt Gaetz. Like Matt Gaetz, I'm sorry to say, a detestable person. Seems like he has more genuinely held principles than like anyone on the progressive side right now who have gone along with all of Biden's policies when it comes to foreign policy and when it comes to the immigration policy. I wouldn't say genuinely held principles. Like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is a power play. Like, maybe you're right. But that's the point, though, is that he's willing to, like, wage war against his party leadership. He's willing to, like, use the whatever power he has to remove the speaker of his own party to show, like, that he has the ability to do this. And it kind of seems like something that would be nice to see, rather than on the other side just being like, well, we have to be nice and we have to play ball. We have to be nice and play ball, and then we'll get put on committees and we'll get our agenda to be sort of like enacted. But how that has not happened, though. That has not happened. I'm not trying to hand it to Matt Gaetz. I don't like Matt Gaetz. I think he stands for a lot of grotesque things, and he's involved in this weird paying for sex possibly with minors, fucked up scandal. Like, it's insane. That's my point, though. That's how low the bar is. And now you have Gaetz trying to argue for Ro Khanna's policies to be put in place about like banning PAC money and banning lobbyists and enacting term limits. It's fucking bizarre. Yeah, it's great for a child sex trafficker to be the face of ending the war. Yeah, and then people say like, oh, you agree with stopping the flow of arms to Ukraine? What are you, like one of these conservative guys? Like, how has that become a conservative position? Like, what is going on? It's really weird. Trump will do the anti-war thing and his surrogates have all already started. I mean, that's the preposterous thing is that, like I've pointed out, that whole policy continued under Trump. That whole policy of arming Ukraine and sanctioning Russia and provoking Russia was going on under Trump. Like, the idea that these people have any credibility at all about this is just nonsense. It's mostly just like a partisan thing. Like I said, I don't believe it's because of genuinely held principles, anti-war principles. If it was Donald Trump saying, persecuting this war, this proxy war, all of these people would be on board with it. It's purely like a way to own the libs. You know, everything filtered through this partisan lens or this culture war lens. And like Trump continued this process of arming and funding these militia groups in eastern Ukraine. Gates literally just said he wanted to bomb Mexico. Yeah, no, I don't believe these people have good principles. Like, I try to keep making that clear whenever we have these discussions, just so there's no confusion about that, you know? But that's the whole problem, though, is that there's no one on the progressive side that's making this case. No one. Like, not one person. Not one person is like, we should have peace in Ukraine. We should have peace. We should promote peace talks. We should stop sending weapons. And now it's the situation where it's just this partisan thing. Now, if you don't support sending weapons to Ukraine, it means you're one of these conservative guys. It's totally ludicrous. What if you don't want to invade Mexico or keep funding the war? Well, that's not an option. Yeah, and like we've been talking about, most of these conservative guys, even if they're talking about defunding the war in Ukraine, they all want to pivot to increasing the war with China. And they think Biden is like going too soft on China. So that's the whole bait and switch that's going on there. Seems to be happening in Europe too, and opening for conservative parties. And it's no wonder, like something we've been talking about a lot. And Putin was pointing this out recently as well, and he was absolutely correct. Talking about how these European countries have sacrificed their own economic security to benefit the U.S. And there's going to be plenty of openings for these like right-wing parties in Europe being like, do you want to, like, we're paying higher energy costs. We're getting completely fucked because we've backed the U.S. on this. Republicans think that Biden's already sold the U.S. to China. I mean, that's the amazing thing about these people. They already think Biden is some kind of like Chinese agent or something. Fascists all over gaining with liberal help. It's going great. It really is. Yeah, if only there was some kind of historical parallel or analogy we could take a look at. If only there was some kind of historical parallel to this rise of fascism or global happening around the world right now, being totally abetted by liberals in the West. Hang on, I'm just going to get some fruit. I got to get some fruit before we dig into all this. Here I am, munching on some sweet globes. Munching on some sweet globes. If you could look into a crystal ball, where are we in 10 years? Fuck, I don't know. It's really hard to speculate and not sound doomer. Like I've said a couple times, I do feel like, and I hope this is wrong. I hope this is not true. I don't want it to be true. I do feel like World War III is probably inevitable. I can't help but feel that way. I would really like for it not to be so. It kind of feels like it's already started, though. And I don't know if there's a whole lot we can do to stop it. It sucks. I don't know. It sucks, man. What can we say? What can we even say about it? I blame John Mearsheimer. Well, me too. Me too. You know the nukes are going to start going off and you're still going to have to go to work too, right? You're still going to have to go to work. Pop those iodine pills and get back to it. Would you like a breakfast burrito? Son, no. Me, are you sure? Son, yes. Son, proceeds to eat half my burrito. That's absolute bullshit. I'm sorry to say, Barbara. You gotta shut that down. And no, you had your chance. You had your chance. No burrito for you. two wolves inside of me. What future? And it's not written yet, actually. I mean, listen. One of my personal heroes, James Cameron, once wrote, "There's no fate. There's no fate but what we make for ourselves." Words of wisdom. Rob was right. We must kill Miles Dyson. That's right. That's what I'm trying to say. But Terminator 3 showed you can't escape your fate. That's not canon, though. I'm sorry. Terminator 3 is pretty fun, but it's not canon. Let's be real here. I saw as well I had never seen Terminator Dark Fate, but they did a whole like de-aged Linda Hamilton and Edward Furlong thing where teen Edward Furlong, like after the events of T2, gets murdered. I was like, God damn. God damn. Like, did you have to do that? Really? Jesus. Yeah, in Cancun? I don't know. None of it is canon. None of it is canon. My hot take is Terminator Salvation was decent. I don't even think that's a really hot take. I think I had such low expectations for Terminator Salvation when it came out that I ended up not really minding it. I thought it was alright. Still not canon, I would say, but better than it had any right to be. It's not canon. Here I am, munching on some juicy grapes. There's Genesis. I didn't see that one either. I can't anymore. It's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. My favorite films have, like when I was a kid, oh boy, did I ever think if there's ever a Terminator 3, if there was a whole franchise of Terminator films, there's a whole franchise of like new Alien films and new zombie stuff, man, that'd be so great. And the finger on the monkey's paw curls. And you actually look at this stuff and it's just shit. Just all pure garbage. All my favorite franchises now are just existing in perpetuity. And it all sucks. The Thing from 2014. Yeah. I don't think that was like an affront to anything. It wasn't atrocious, but was totally not necessary as well. And we watched The Thing the other night, the original, and looks way better. You know, 20 years before, 30 years before, it looks way better. Munching on a bunch of grapes. There's a remake with it's not even a remake, it's like a prequel with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, is that her name? With Ramona Flowers from the Scott Pilgrim movie. And Joel Edgerton, who's pretty good as well. It's not bad, but it's really not necessary. It was completely not necessary to make it all. Watching number 3, I liked it more. Some big set pieces. I haven't seen I think I've only watched Terminator 3 once, which is again crazy to me. Like in 1992, I watched T2 so many times. I had T2, the trading cards. I had the novelization, and I was so excited. Why do they need to make a 3? When are they going to make it? And like I literally just watched when it finally came out. I just watched it once, and I've never thought about it again after that. It does have some big set pieces. There's no denying that, but it's just not the same. It's just not as good. It's just not as good, and it's not necessary. You have the first two films. Anything beyond that, with all the time travel stuff, it becomes way more complicated. I think even T2 with like the time travel paradox things is already straining credibility. It's not Big Jim, that's right. You need Big Jim in there, and not even just as a producer. You need his creative vision all the way. It's already straining credibility with T2 and the time travel stuff. Anything beyond that, it becomes so convoluted and just a big mess. Okay, let's talk about this business here. Raptors just donated $10,000 to the strike fund for teaching support staff at Simon Fraser University. That's good to know. Emperor's New Clothes, no. Someday we'll find it. The Nazi connection. Where to start with this? I mean, let's go right to Chrystia Freeland, okay? Because we've been wondering, why is no one asking her about this? This is the thing that's been bothering me for weeks now. This whole suggestion that they just didn't know. We just didn't know. Not even Chrystia Freeland, who literally has a familial connection to this movement, who is supposed to be an expert. Is supposed to be an expert in this history. The idea that she doesn't know, that she didn't know what was going on here, completely makes no sense at all.
Obvious.
Let's hear what she has to say. How is old Christy going to wriggle out of this one? We'll see. I don't know.
Obviously, none of us understood. None of us recognized what was happening.
Stupid. That's the only that's what we're being asked to believe. She's saying me and every single person around me is really ignorant, is just ignorant about basic historical facts. And Putin calls them out on this, frankly. And we're going to look at his comments after. And you don't have to like Putin. And in fact, I don't, as you know. I think that he's bad. But he points this out, and it's correct. Like, ignorance is not a really great excuse when you're leading a nation. This kind of ignorance. Just white knuckle. No, for sure. Carnova, just like clenched fists. Zelensky knew for sure. This is what we need to ask ourselves. We keep talking about, we embarrassed the Ukrainian delegation. We embarrassed Zelensky. Why is no one asking Zelensky about this? Why is no one asking? I would like Zelensky actually to be asked and to go on record and to say, like, yes, this guy Hunka was a Nazi and these Nazis were bad. These Waffen SS divisions. I would like for Zelensky to go on record and say that, frankly. If there is no connection between these SS groups and this Ukrainian nationalist movement, surely it should be no problem to just say, like, yeah, the man was a Nazi. It was really bad what happened. And I take it back. Do you know why he's not going to, though? Because the fascist sympathizing militias that are such a big part of his military establishment are going to fucking kill him if he does say that. That's why no one's asking him that question. Because that's what that's going to mean. Anyway, let's hear it again.
Obviously, none of us understood. None of us recognized what was happening. And that compounds the very grave error. And that makes it really painful for all of us. I see my colleagues here also nodding.
Jesus, look at her hands.
No one recognized what was going on. That is terrible. And it is terrible that it happened. And
she was probably
former
planning on
speaker,
celebrating these people even more.
Acknowledges his mistake and step down. But I'm just going to conclude by saying that, this is it. I think it's incredibly painful for everyone who was in the house at that time. A horrible moment, but it's not about us. For me, the real...
it was a horrible moment. It was literally the highlight of her whole career. Remember that we made fun of it on the day. Her face, she was so happy. There's something delicious about that I can't help but enjoying. It was the greatest day of her whole life, and now look at her face. Now it's like, it's so horrible. It's so horrible what happened. I do like that. Yeah, she was absolutely beaming, Hildy. She was so happy.
The very real pain is that it's really, really hurt so many people in Canada, so many communities, starting with the Jewish community in Canada. That's awful.
How about the Ukrainian community? The non-Nazi Ukrainian community?
That this has damaged and harmed the brave people of Ukraine and the Ukrainian president, who we were so proud to welcome.
Okay. Oh, she's just so upset. She's so upset. Again, if it was so harmful to the Ukrainian president, why won't someone just ask him? I'd ask the Ukrainian president to denounce this guy and to denounce the Waffen SS. Or better yet, go and talk to some of these frontline Azov guys and ask them what they think about the Waffen SS division. And whether these people should be celebrated or not.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Massive epic fail all around.
It was a massive epic fail. Who was that? Soviet Sasha, thank you for 6 months, tier 1. Very happy to have you in the community, Sasha. Thank you. Again, look at these guys. Because remember, it's not just about Yaroslav Hunka. There's this long connection. This is why we have these Nazi monuments in Canada. And there you have neo-Nazis coming to visit the SS Galicia Division monument in Oakville. Again, let's ask these people. For all these people that want to downplay this connection between Ukrainian nationalism and people like Yaroslav Hunka and the Waffen SS and the UPA and all these things, want to downplay the connection or suggest there's no connection, go ask these people like what they think, these far right Ukrainian nationalists. And this is what they say. Yaroslav Hunka is a hero. For the first time in decades, at least, someone received a standing ovation in Canadian Parliament who truly deserved it. A nationalist veteran who fought the forces of the left. The idea that this is some fringe belief in this Ukrainian nationalist movement, I'm sorry to say, is not accurate. This is not a fringe belief. This is what a lot of people who are tied up in this movement and have been promoting this kind of form of Ukrainian nationalism for generations now, this is what they believe in. This is why we have these monuments. And I want to talk also about this like Putin. This is a gift for Putin. That's the biggest problem here, is that we've given this gift, this propaganda gift to Putin. Let's say that that's true, okay? And it validates, it did play a big role in validating a lot of what Putin is saying about this like Nazi regime in Ukraine and this whole denazification. And you don't have to think that Putin has a lot of credibility to carry out this denazification process, but it does validate those things that he's been saying. You know what I think, though, would take that away? And if we're serious about taking away these propaganda opportunities for Russia and Putin, and if we're really serious, we don't want to give him any ammunition or credibility to these false arguments, according to our political class and our media, well, here's what we should do. We should take down these Nazi monuments in Canada, these monuments like the ones that these neo-Nazis are standing next to for these Waffen-SS divisions, take those down, rip them out of the ground, and we should find out however many other former SS members and Nazis we have in this country, and find out who we are, and publicize who they are, and actually talk about this. If we're really serious about confronting this past and atoning for this mistake, we want to say we're so sorry. We're so sorry. It was a big mistake. The speaker stepped down, and we'll never do it again. We'll never do it again. Well, if we're actually sorry, she's talking about how the Jewish community is hurt. She's talking about how Ukrainians are hurt, how other people are hurt by having these, by the fact that we honored this Nazi in our parliament. Then why don't we do the work here? If we're against this, according to Chrystia Freeland, according to Justin Trudeau, according to Pierre Poilievre and the conservatives that are now talking about this, if we're so sorry, if we want to make amends to the Jewish community or the Ukrainian community or whoever else who is offended by the fact that we have these kind of monuments or we have this legacy of bringing these Nazis into our country, let's go fucking get them out of our country then. Let's find out who they are. Let's talk about this. Let's get rid of these monuments. If we're not going to do any of that stuff, then I'm sorry, but I don't think we actually are sorry about this. I don't think we're sorry at all. I think they're sorry they got caught. I think they're sorry they got a little too ahead of themselves in this revision with where we are. How far along are we on this revisionist project? This is the project of historical revisionism. If we're actually sorry, let's actually show that. If we think it's bad that Yaroslav Hunka, and a former member of the Waffen-SS, came to Canada and had a nice life and made a nice home here, if we think that's a problem, and according to Chrystia Freeland, according to Justin Trudeau, it is a problem, then let's find all the other Yaroslav Hunkas that are in our country. Let's get rid of these let's tear up these monuments. Let's blow up these monuments that we have to the Waffen-SS division. Oh, sorry, we're not interested in doing that? Okay. Then it doesn't really seem like we are sorry at all. We're sorry about this one incident, but we're not going to do anything to ensure that we don't continue to uphold this exact same legacy. And look at this. Listen, you don't have to like the guy. You don't have to like the guy. But this is just one of those cases. This is one of those cases. Watch this clip and just tell me to stop the video when you hear a lie. Okay? How about that?
Мы относимся к Канаде, несмотря ни на что, с уважением, особенно к людям. Но если он не знает, что во время войны против России сражался Гитлер и его приспешники, то он идиот. Он, значит, просто в школе не учился, не имеет элементарных знаний. А если он знает, что этот человек сражался на стороне Гитлера, и называет его героем Украины и героем Канады, то он негодяй. Или так, или так.
I'm sorry. But as I've been saying, these are the two options that are being presented to us here. Okay, don't shoot the messenger, whether it's me or anyone else. The music was funny, yeah. You know what I mean, though? It's like they either knew and they supported Nazism and they thought it was good to bring this SS guy into Parliament to give him a standing ovation, or they don't know and they're just really stupid. Every single person in our Parliament, including Chrystia Freeland, the Russian and Ukrainian history, the bilingual or multilingual Ukrainian language speaking expert in Ukrainian history and culture. She just didn't know. We just had no idea. This has been so painful. It's been so painful for everyone. We just didn't know, and the speaker stepped down, and let's just move on. So either her degree is, her supposed expertise is just completely worthless and completely fake, or she knew. And again, I find it really hard to believe that she didn't know. I'm sorry to say. We threw that one guy under the bus. What more could we want? Well, that's it. I'm outlining exactly what I want. If these people are serious, if they're serious about this, if they're serious about the fact that, like, it's bad that we have this legacy of collaborating with Ukrainian fascists and Nazis and former SS members, and that it was bad that in this context, one of these people got an invite to our parliament where they got two standing ovations, actually. If they're really serious about making amends for this mistake, apparently, this mistake that they made, well then let's find the other Yaroslav Hunkas in our society. Let's bring them to justice as well, and let's tear up these Nazi monuments we have in our country. If we're not doing that, then I don't want to hear any of this bullshit about, oh, we're so sorry. Why isn't Pierre Poilievre criticizing Freeland? I'm not sure. I find it weird that he isn't doing that. Well, it's funny because you saw Pierre was pushing for this for a little while. Let's have a hearing about this because they can see that it hurts liberals politically. Let's have a hearing or whatever. But like, I'm not convinced that they want this information being released at all either. I think they've actually kind of backed down from some of these claims. Like, look at this. This is from CBC. Trudeau looking carefully at, when was this? This was just a couple days ago, 2 days ago. Trudeau looking carefully at releasing names of ex-Nazis in Canada. All of a sudden, though, Conservative MP says now is not the time to release details of alleged Nazi war criminals. Conservative caucus divided on whether to release new details. They're not, as much as Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives want to turn this into a big political issue because they know it hurts the Liberals, they're in agreement with this. They're in agreement that, like, no, we don't want to dig too much further on this. You want to have a few hearings, whatever, we can hurt the Liberals, we can turn it into some, like, fundraising emails, but we don't actually want to dig into this too much. We already know they were let in during the 50s because they were highly anti-communist. Yeah, that's the amazing thing. Like, we looked at that clip from Freeland, we just didn't know. We had no idea. As we looked at last week, CBC was putting out documentaries about this in the 90s, about this connection with Ukraine and these Nazis that we let into the country. This is not a new story. There was a scandal on this in the 80s during Mulrooney. You have a big CBC news piece on it 30 years ago. You have a big 60 Minutes news piece on it 30 years ago. And they still don't know? They still don't know. We had no idea. We just had no clue that this guy, this Ukrainian nationalist who is, as described in the House, fought against the Russians during World War II. Not before, not after, during World War II. Well, we just had no idea. It's so painful. It's been so painful for so many, including me, Chrystia Freeland, the biggest victim of all. The biggest victim of all. We just had no idea. Yeah, and we have been training Ukrainian Nazis since 2014. Yes, we have been. Canadian intelligence has been involved in training and arming these groups since 2015, who all look up to the Yaroslav Hunkas of the world and these veterans who fought for the Waffen-SS. We just had no clue. We had no idea. What? You were telling me this guy was a Nazi? Oh my gosh, I just had no clue. Again, we're not even talking about the history. World War II fought against the Russians during World War II and that kind of thing. That kind of basic thing that most people should understand. But the last 10 years of our foreign policy that's been contributing to this, and the multiple scandals that have happened over the decades about this Ukrainian community and their connection to the SS and Nazism. With all of that context, plus the introduction of this guy in Parliament, what? Nazi, you say? Wow, I just didn't know. I just had no idea. Plus Chrystia Freeland's her family background and her educational background. We just had no idea. Oh, gosh, shucks. Oh, golly gee whiz. We just had no clue. Like, give me a fucking break. That they expect anyone to believe that. And like Putin says in that clip, they're either ignorant or they're Nazi sympathizers. Well, so which is it? And I think option one, the pleading ignorance thing, stretches credibility to like the absolute fucking breaking point. And like I said, Rob, you're just promoting this Putin propaganda. Putin propaganda. As I said, there's a way to undo this. If you want to really own Putin, as I do, since he is bad, and if you really want to own Putin, let's find all the other Yaroslav Hunka, former SS guys in our society and bring them to justice and have some kind of sense of accountability about how they ended up here in the first place. And let's rip up all these Nazi monuments we got in the country, the 2 or 3 monuments that we have to this Waffen-SS division. And that'll own Putin, and then he won't be able to make these claims anymore. Does that sound good? Well, it doesn't seem like anyone is actually on board with that. They just want to say sorry. They want to talk about the pain they caused, and then we're moving on. You know?
They were completely aware, and this is why they're all being silent now. Trudeau is being silent, Friedland's being silent, Zelensky's being silent. Well, Zelensky has a gun to his head, so he can't say this guy is a war criminal or he's dead. So I think the silence really speaks for itself. And a lot of parties on the left are silent too, because they've been supporting this anti-Russian narrative for so long that they can't go back on their word. I think they were...
Like, I love that we have random anti-war rally cranks on the street that talk more sense about this than anyone in our media or ruling class. No one in CBC can make this case. This is from a protest from the other day over this. It's stopping the funding for Ukraine. This is Canada Files was collected this clip. It's the Canadian-style vibes-based apology, empty sentiment with zero material atonement. Yeah, that's how we do things. See, also the spirit of reconciliation. That's how we lower the flags for 6 weeks. We lower the flags to half-mast for 6. We lower our Nazi flags to half-mast for 6 weeks. That's the Canadian-style atonement for this. We'll lower our Nazi flags for just a few weeks to acknowledge this. Trudeau truly a master of going, yeah, I don't know if that was the face, but you get it. Anyway, in a couple minutes, we have we've got Duncan, Kenney, and Jeremy Appel coming on the show. Jeremy is one of the people that really helped blow this story up. They just released this story in the progress report. The University of Alberta's $1.4 million Nazi problem. So we are going to be... I really appreciate both the work that both of these guys have done covering this. Like I said, Jeremy really, really did help blow this up into an international scandal, along with yours truly, if you don't mind me taking a small iota of credit for contributing to that. Just a small iota. Helping turn this story that could have gotten swept under the rug, like every single other connection with the Canadian fascism, could have gotten swept under the rug, but then turned into a big international scandal. I was about to say Kenney's stuff in particular has been really good for helping me feel not insane about this. Yeah, no, me too, absolutely. And like again, I was talking with Duncan about this history like before this invasion happened. This is one of the things that learning about this history and learning about this connection has made it for me personally that I've just never been comfortable with this big pro-Ukraine, we must protect and fund Ukraine, and we must preserve Ukrainian democracy. We must continue the flow of arms and funding. I've just never been on board with this. Precisely because I knew about this history prior to the invasion taking place, and I didn't just start thinking about it in the last year and a half, like some of the Johnny-come-latelys on Twitch that have like built big platforms off of being a pro-NATO propagandists, not naming any names. Yeah, Moss Robeson as well is doing a ton of great stuff exploring this connection. Absolutely. And we're going to look at it, some of it after this conversation with Jeremy and Duncan. Let me just fire up Zoom here. Firing up Zoom. There's the invite link. Okay. We've got Jeremy and Duncan joining the show right now. Just a moment. I'm fired up, folks. I'm fired up. I'm cracking open a fizzy water. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello. I realized my name on
Mo
here.
Cranker.
Yeah, no, that's my alias.
Okay.
No, actually, he's the producer of the Forgotten Corner um
Okay.
podcast I host. That's also on the Harbinger Media Network.
Oh, cool. Mo
Yeah.
Cranker. I like that.
Check it. We interviewed Moss Robson last week, but the episode just came out yesterday.
Oh, great.
So yeah, I saw someone in the chat was singing the praises of Moss, and I'd just like to second that.
Moss has been doing the work in uncovering this history.
He has done his homework.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And yeah, I don't know how he's also now a video guy like you.
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, I watched his interview with JP Himka, and it was interesting.
Yeah. And what podcast is that? I can throw a link in the chat.
That's the Forgotten Corner. Do you want me to link you in our chat, and then you can?
I think I got it. Is it Forgotten Corner Pod? Oh,
yes.
.com? That doesn't look like you. Or do you just... okay, no, it does look like you. Okay, I see. It's an older picture,
Yeah,
I think. A press photo.
That was like before I accepted I was bald.
Well, you look good either way. You look good there. You look good now. I'm not...
Thank you. Yeah, I think the balding head with like decent length hair had some character.
Yeah.
So what is did you message Duncan?
Yeah, I just sent it. Duncan's just joining us right now. Right at this very moment.
This is Duncan's first appearance on TRRS?
I've definitely talked to Duncan on podcasts before. No, I think he came on when he was running for Senate.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Damn shame he didn't win.
Yeah, well, he's still electable if you vote for him. You know?
Yeah.
It's not over yet. We gotta stop the steal.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, it says Duncan Kenny joining, but still nothing.
But yeah, so how's everyone doing in the chat? That's what I like about Twitch, and I wish I did more of it. Is it's like very interactive in a way that like podcasts aren't.
Yeah, I like that as well. I like being able to we can riff with people.
Yeah,
the community.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, you know what your viewers are like into. You know what works and what doesn't, like in the moment.
Okay. Duncan says it's fucking up. So just doing some live tech support stuff here. Jeremy, talk to the chat while I try to figure this out.
All right.
Chad, throw some questions at Jeremy. Okay, I got to fix this.
Yeah, no, comrade social distancing. Yeah, I really like the map as a background. I think it makes me look very worldly. The river you're referring to, that's actually a Grateful Dead poster. I don't know. Any other deadheads in the chat? Any deadheads? If I was an ice cream flavor, which would I be and why? Oh man, that's a tough question. I feel like I would be. Ooh, that's a tough one. But I would be. I mean, I guess it's kind of a lame answer, but I guess I would be cookies and cream. Because like I don't know, I think it's a great combination. But yeah, Doc Not So Strange, you saw Phil Lesh back in college. I would say that counts. I saw Phil Lesh at a music festival once with all these jam bands and jam adjacent bands like My Morning Jacket. And yeah, it was good. It was a good show. Yeah, man, have you ever noticed Phil Lesh has like massive hands?
Can you hear me, Rob?
Yeah. Duncan, are you there? You were there on screen and then you disappeared.
Like
I'm here.
massive...
I cut the video. I cut the video because it's fucking up. But if you can hear me, I can see my audio going.
Hunger Games 89, definitely nuts on a nice.
Right, I'm gonna start my video
if
again.
They're available. I like getting nutty.
We good?
Yeah, we're good. I think. Do you hear Jeremy talking about ice cream and jam bands and stuff?
I hear him. Yeah, I hear everything.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, now it's fucking up again.
Well,
have I ever worn shoes not of the same pair at the same time? No.
You look like Max Headroom.
I do. Fuck, that's amazing.
It's like a cool effect, man.
All right, I'll just kill the video, but can you hear me? I mean, I can just maybe wait for my internet to finally unfuck itself.
Yeah, I can maybe like find a picture of you to put in the corner though to indicate that you're there as well.
Yeah, here, let me put something. I can put something in the chat.
So have I recovered from my battle with the food professor? I mean, yeah, I think I came out of it doing great. I mean, he blocked me again on Twitter, which was a pity. But his alts sure haven't blocked me that are dedicated to attacking me and pretending that they're not him. It really pathetic ways. But no, it's been great.
Professor.
It's been a great beef. I've really enjoyed every moment of it. That's the thing with a lot of these big media.
Build some of the other
icons.
tabs too, so it should work.
Okay, I'll close that then.
They're so thin-skinned, right? That like they're so like you can sort of piggyback off their large audience by just going after them and seeing them melt down.
Because they can't resist replying. They can't resist. They can't just mute you and just close it, which would instantly make 90% of their problems just go away. But they're so. That's the amazing thing about Twitter is a lot of these people are so not used to being criticized publicly like that they just can't fucking handle it, and they can't do the easy thing that would make all the bad people go away instantly. But they just can't help themselves. They gotta respond. They gotta get in there.
Yeah, and he's on like Dean Blundell's like dumb YouTube show, and he like brought it up unprompted. And this was like the day after or something. He didn't mention me by name, but he's like, yeah, I got this like hit piece out against me that I'm definitely not mad about. And yeah, I love fun with it. You know, RIP to my ability to follow him. But that is the great thing about Twitter, Rob. And that's something that I don't think, you know, when Twitter goes the way of the dodo bird, that's something that will never happen again. No. Right. And that's why Elon bought it, right? To make it harder to do that to him in particular. But you know, so Ken Klippenstein can't post photos of him with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah. Or Juniper.
Photo. Yeah. Yeah. RIP to a real one.
Yeah.
So are we good to go here?
Yes.
All right.
We were just doing a little chit-chatting. No, but you know what? That's actually a good way to get into this conversation. Because when we talk about what happened in our parliament, now, what was it, 3 weeks ago?
I think it was 2.
Yeah. Like we on this stream.
2 weeks ago. 2 Fridays.
Yeah, it was actually exactly 2 weeks ago today.
Yeah. Because on this stream, we watched a lot of the Zelensky speech and Trudeau, and we were watching it and criticizing it and laughing about it, etc. And I missed that. I missed the whole hunka part, I guess, because it is kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. And it wasn't until after that I saw the clip starting to go around that I was like, oh my goodness, like that's even more blatant than what it was like during the actual Zelensky speech, the way that they were kind of downplaying this connection. And this is one thing that I really truly believe, like while we're talking about Twitter and the ability to kind of like change narratives in this way or to promote these kind of alternate narratives, I really do believe that this would have gotten swept under the rug and would have been ignored. You know, our media is allergic to talking about this. They didn't want to talk about it. I really think it would have gotten swept under the rug and ignored if people on Twitter, such as you, Jeremy, you wrote about this. I tried to do my part, Duncan. If we collectively, along with everyone else that was talking about this, hadn't made an issue of this and shared posts about it and made this clip go viral, I really think that's what turned it into a big like international scandal that forced our government to actually reference what had happened and apologize, and forced our media to go against their better judgment to actually talk about this. Like, I really do believe that that kind of happened because of people on Twitter sharing that link and not letting them just sweep it under the rug.
It is a real unique set of circumstances that led us here. And by the way, hello everyone on the Rob Rousseau Twitch stream. It's me, Duncan Kinney, the editor of the Progress Report. I don't know if Rob has actually done any intros or not, but I appreciate.
You mentioned that you're a senator.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a senator. Definitely can kill legislation. No, it's funny. I think it's so many things coming together all at once. You do have, Twitter leftists, communists, people who know the history being like, this guy's a fucking Nazi. And, social media being what it is in 2023, being able to say that out loud and perhaps for other people to see it and for journalists to see it. But also you've got a politician and the speaker who actually felt shame about this, who didn't seem to actually genuinely know what was going on, and hasn't had anyone sit him down, be like, oh no, like Ukrainian Nazis are just kind of around. And like, we just kind of tolerate them as like that. Well, no one's so ashamed about doing this. Him resigning makes a story. And you also have the conservatives who again are a hegemonic force in federal politics in Alberta here, stepping out and being like, oh, actually, we were tricked. This is bad. The Nazis are bad. This is terrible. And turning it into like a political partisan issue. And you kind of get all three of those things coming together, and it is really unignorable as far as a media story. And then it gets out of Canada. And then once it gets out of Canada, it has its own legs. Other nations are being like, what the fuck? There was a Nazi getting applauded, and then Russia gets a hold of it. They're going to do what they're going to do. But like, and then it gets international. It's the story that's metastasized over 2 weeks. So we're still going to be talking about. I have a feeling we're still going to be talking about it next week, and it's going to be something that people are going to remember when it comes to like, especially people outside of Canada. We're going to be like, Canadian politics. Oh yeah. The fucking idiots who applauded a Nazi.
I mean, the image of Trudeau and Freeland and Zelensky all applauding is just instantly iconic. Like, we're going to be seeing that over and over and over again, like for the next couple of years, for sure.
Yeah. Where were you when Canadian Parliament applauded a Nazi? Where were you when the world stopped turning?
I noticed it that day. Like, I talked about it with my partner, I think either that night or the next morning, and I was like, holy fuck, this like really happened. And she's like, what? And I was like, yeah, it really did. And then it slowly started ticking, and people were like, fuck. And yeah, and the speaker resigning, I think, kicked everything off. Polyev kicking it, everything kept it going too. Twitter leftists being like, fuck. But now the Pandora's box has been opened, like, this is a story that you could literally research and write about for the rest of your life.
It was really when like Jewish groups like the Friends of the Sun, Wiesenthal Center started making a stink about it, that it actually became like a mainstream issue.
We can't ignore this anymore now.
Yeah, and it's funny because where'd they get it from? They got from left Twitter, the people that they're like always accusing of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, for me, like the Jewish Federation Edmonton, I mean, hate me, but
and I had written about this story for years. They would never give a quote to me about this stuff.
Yeah. And to their credit, B'nai B'rith and like Wiesenthal would. But it's funny now, like being on the same side as them, because that almost never happens with me. And it is interesting to see CJA and like the Jewish Federation be like, oh, we knew all along that this is horrible. We've always been against
Yeah.
it. And it's like,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't give credit to B'nai B'rith very often, but Abe Silverman and B'nai B'rith Alberta have been willing to speak to me and give quotes and talk about Ukrainian Nazi collaborators and their monuments in Edmonton over the past 2 or 3 years. And like that, I don't have too many nice things to say about B'nai B'rith, but like, that is a thing that happened out here. And
yeah.
and then everyone else kind of followed up. The ones who wouldn't talk to me before, your Jewish federations, CJA, which is like, again, the government, CJA has is taken very seriously by a lot of parliamentarians when they say
Well,
something.
also the Jewish federations, I know we're getting a bit off topic, but they actually fund CJA. So
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of Jewish people know this, but when you're giving money to your Jewish federation to help build a community center or something, it's actually going to CJA, which mostly does, anti-Palestinian lobbying. But I'm sure they'll be back to that, whenever this does die down in a couple weeks, they'll be back to harassing Palestinian students on university campuses. But credit where credit is due.
Yeah, and this is what I've been talking about, because like the three of us and together and separately and in other contexts have been talking about this story for a while. This is not a new situation. It didn't just come up over the last year and a half. Like, since this invasion happened, we were talking about it years ago. And that's
the city that we live in. The city that we live in, Edmonton, has 2 monuments to Nazi collaborators. There's one very prominently in Oakville, where neo-Nazis were like taking pictures and talking about how based, Yaroslav Hunka was for fighting communists and shit. Like,
yeah, I was just looking at that.
Yeah, and like these you get a lot of people who want to excuse kind of, oh, he's an old man, oh, he was a teenager when he joined, blah blah blah, and like, well, what about the Germans and the Italians and the Vietnamese who all may have fought against our soldiers and then came to Canada as refugees or whatever, but none of those groups have ongoing memory projects where the heroes, the people who fought against kind of our allies or us in those other kind of countries' contexts are still memorialized and hailed as heroes, and that's kind of like unique in that that Ukrainian nationalists here in Canada have found such a comfortable home that they've been able to kind of continue the memory project of glorifying Nazi collaborators, which is,
well, yeah. And I mean, there's that quote that from Freeland in that Michael Ignatieff book, which is actually a really good book, Blood and Belonging.
Yeah, I find that so interesting, for sure. Yeah.
And this is in the early 90s, and she's saying that, yeah, the like Ukrainians living in Ukraine, I mean, they're not real Ukrainians.
They're like Soviet ironic socialists. Yeah.
And it's the diaspora Ukrainians who've kept like the spirit of the nation alive, which is pretty fascist, I would say.
Yes,
but rare time that Michael Ignatieff ever made a good point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he didn't say it
in spite of himself. Yeah.
No, but he was just like,
he's one of those guys, though, I think, that 9/11 really fucking broke his brain. Because I mean, if you read his books from the 90s, they're all pretty good, at least. And then the 2000s, it's like, what if torture was moral?
Speaking of breaking people's brains, I think that's a good segue into like how the Russian invasion of Ukraine has broken the brain of a lot of kind of liberal types. And like, this isn't we're not here to have a discussion about the Russian invasion of Ukraine or the Ukrainian-Russian war, but like, because that happened, because it's ongoing, I mean, you've seen these people, we've seen these people, there are people who are listening and in the chat have seen these people who are willing to justify the most insane shit, like literally Waffen SS. People volunteering to join the Waffen SS and do atrocities in Eastern Europe during the Second World War. Like, they're willing to excuse that because they signed up ostensibly to fight communists.
Well, that was right. I mean, that was the threat of that awful Justin Ling piece that all the liberals were like, oh, this is a must read, where he literally cites a book by a guy whose dad was a 14th Waffen SS veteran, about how his dad wasn't a
Wasn't one of the
Nazi.
bad ones.
Like,
He was a clean SS. Clean SS. Yeah.
no, but even like the quote in there is like mind-boggling. In Ling's site says this like authoritative perspective where he's like, no, they weren't SS men. They were Ukrainians who joined the SS.
Yes.
It's a very
like,
important difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just a long way of saying the same thing.
Which is, and when we talk about the Waffen SS, you know, everyone kind of knows that they did the genocide, right? Like everyone kind of knows. If you've taken a history class, like even an entry level, like or World War II or anything, like you kind of know that the Waffen SS were the bad guys. And it's so insane that now we have liberals and kind of apologists for this kind of going on making the case for the not just a clean Wehrmacht, but a clean SS. And that's why I thought it was so important in the piece that Jeremy and I co-bylined together to go over what exactly the 14th Waffen SS fucking did. Because it's all, whenever it's discussed, it's kind of elided. It's maybe they mention the Huta Piniaka massacre, or I don't know how to say that. I'm not Polish, but there's this kind of one massacre that's kind of well known. 500 to 1,000 Poles were kind of like shot or burned in a barn to death. But they weren't a military unit per se. The one military battle that the fucking 14th Waffen SS got in, they were fucking washed. They got their shit run by
they got murked
by the Red Army, right? And at that point, they really ceased to be an effective military unit. Everything up until that point, they were a police battalion. They would go around Eastern Europe, fucking murdering civilians or partisans or rebels, people who the Third Reich wanted killed. They would go around and fucking kill them. Whether it was in Slovakia next to the Derlewanger Brigade, whether it was in Yugoslavia killing, partisans for Tito, whether it was in Poland. I mean, they spent a lot of time in Poland fucking killing Poles. And like, when you look at what the Ukrainian nationalists were up to in 1943-44, that was certainly a very big focus of theirs, was murdering Polish people. You have to take a step away from the Waffen SS and go to the UPA, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. They really fucking murdered a lot of Poles. But like,
even the Nazis for them were like, whoa, you're taking this a little too far here. Like,
and I think that's an important point that Moss Robeson made when we interviewed him on the Forgotten Corner, was that like Freeland, right? Because of course the news out today is Freeland again saying, "Oh, how nobody in Parliament
just had no clue.
You
what?
Were ignorant."
Yeah,
and I think that's true of most people in Parliament. I think that's
if true, I think that's a sad state of affairs, though. I don't think ignorance is a great excuse for just not knowing basic historical facts.
Yeah, no, but what the point Moss made actually was Freeland probably thought when she heard fought Russians in World War II, she probably thought he was an UPA guy, right? Like a Ukrainian Insurgent Army guy who, as Duncan just said, killed, and Rob as well, they killed more Poles and Jews than the 14th Waffen SS. But they had more of a ambivalent relationship with the Nazis, so it's easier for Ukrainian nationalists to be like, "What do you mean they fought the Nazis?" And it's like, no, the Nazis fought them.
And they were like, their commanding officers of the UPA were like literally wore Nazi uniforms and like murdered Jews as part of the Holocaust.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted to create an independent Ukraine on the model of Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, right? Like the problem the Nazis had was one, they wanted independent Ukraine, which the Nazis didn't want, and also they were just too erratic. They were unreliable, right?
And Freeland, like early on in this conflict, went to a rally and held up that black and red scarf with the UPA colors as well. And this is the whole thing with her this entire time. Like, we keep being asked, and she deleted the tweet eventually after all the outcry, but it's like, we keep being asked to believe that she just doesn't understand this history. She doesn't know about it, which is just, it's so much of a stretch that it's completely mind breaking to try and imagine that that's the reality here that they're trying to get us to accept, that with the family history she has and the educational background, that she just doesn't know these things. She just doesn't know what the black and red UPA flag is. She doesn't know who was fighting the Russians during World War II. Like, it's just it's unbelievable that anyone is buying this.
I would give my left pinky to see fucking Christian Freeland like deposed under oath about not just like the affair of the Humka and all that shit. Like, I don't really care about the mechanics of how the guy got introduced or whatever. But like what she really knows about the 14th Waffen SS, about the UPA, about Stepan Bandera, about Roman Shukovich, not only what
Michael
she
Chomiak.
knows about them, yeah, Michael Chomiak, yeah. Not only what she knows about those people, but like what she thinks about them and like what her beliefs regarding those people are, because it's never been laid out. She's never been upfront with her views about these figures, these leaders that are glorified in Ukrainian nationalism, a movement that she grew up in. That's her lifelong political project. And like, I mean, at some point, someone somewhere, please ask her about Stepan Bandera, Roman Shukovich, the 14th Waffen SS, the UPA, and like, and don't let her just kind of like look down at her. Look
This
down
is
at her
so
notes,
painful for everyone.
take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Well, and she always pivots. She always pivots to, oh, you gotta be careful about Russian propaganda,
Yeah,
right? And it's
that's
like,
I mean, that's what everyone says though. When you
yeah, I
talk
mean,
to
Trudeau said it too.
yeah, but even just every Ukrainian nationalist ever, whenever you bring this up, it's like, oh, that's a Russian op. Actually, like that never happened. That's fake. That's fake news. And
Well,
it's
this
like,
is
no,
what I was
like,
saying earlier
we-
too, that like if we're serious about wanting to combat Russian propaganda, I think the way to do that would be to have an actual reckoning with this history. Like recognize that it's not just about this one guy that got invited to parliament by mistake, but there's hundreds or possibly thousands of Yaroslav Hunkas that have made nice lives for themselves in Canada. Ask ourselves why we have these monuments and tear them out of the ground. Then maybe we could take something. If you want to not give that propaganda ammunition to Putin, then that would be doing that. But we don't seem to have any interest in actually reckoning with that history. It's all just like, oh, we're so sorry, big mistake, totally accidental, no one knew, we're all ignorant, the guy Roca resigned, let's just move on, let's forget about the whole thing. But to me, that would be, if you want to own Putin, then maybe we should actually have a conversation about this and hold the other Yaroslav Hunkas in our society to account. But we're not going to be doing that though.
I mean, maybe when the Ukrainian war is over, perhaps. But I see the powers that be are kind of so unwilling to have that conversation right now. But it is, you know, you spoke about how people who made a comfortable life and were very successful here. Like, let's talk about Peter Savarin, right? Like Peter Savarin is really the next kind of like domino to kind of come up. And you know, Jeremy and we figured, I mean, we knew that I knew who Peter Savarin was. Did you know who Peter Savarin was before any of this, Jeremy?
No, actually, it was because I did a story. So this, by the way, pro pivot, Duncan. So basically after the Hunka affair, people were pointing out online that the Canadian Institute for Ukrainian Studies at the University of Alberta had a $30,000 endowment in the name of Yaroslav and his wife, Margaret Hunka. And I was like, oh shit. And I was working on another piece about it, but I figured I'd reach out to the U of A, be like, what's up with that? What's happening with
Sure.
that? And then they got back to me in the evening, and we're like, yeah, we're giving the funds back, and which, again, giving funds back to Nazi sympathizers, I mean, not great.
Yeah.
And we're reviewing our naming policies about naming endowments as if that's the problem and not like the source of those endowments that are being named after these people. And unlike people in, the mainstream media who work a 9 to 5, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna write something up about this. And so then that happened. And then Duncan had mentioned to me, once people were talking about the Hunka stuff, of maybe doing something on Savarin. And then the Hunka stuff, sort of blew open with his donation to the university. And then people were pointing out all these other Waffen SS connections. Per Anders Rudling, like a decade ago, who studied at University of Alberta, but now he's an academic in Sweden, had a paper where he identified 4 endowments or donations in the names of people who like literally fought in the Waffen SS, including a major one that was mostly funded by the Alberta government from the founder of the 14th Waffen SS, a fellow by the name of Kubichovich.
Kubichovich.
Yes,
I don't know how to pronounce.
That sounds right. That I was spitballing, but and then the Globe Mail did a story on that. But then a friend of mine who knows someone who works with the Alberta University of Alberta Students Union told me that they're looking into it and they found almost $1 million in endowments. And then I was like, okay, let's fucking go. And and so Duncan sort of took care of the Savrin stuff and the outlining the history of the 14th Waffen SS, which was a very I think a important addition to the story. And then I spoke to people from the student union and Professor Rudling to be like, all right, who are all these people? Who are we missing here? And went through the archived version of their endowments list, which they, of course, took down after the Hunka endowment was returned. And and there was a lot more where that came from, $1.4 million. And that's minimum. Oh no, we lost Duncan.
Oh, he's back.
Okay.
Yeah.
1.4 million. But there's also, I mean, another, well, maybe.
I'm still here, by the way. My video's fucking up. I'm max headrooming right now.
Okay, yeah, no, feel free to jump in, Duncan.
Well, if I could just jump in for a sec, which is that I think Per Rudling, who is an academic who I think did some time at the University of Alberta, now is the history prof in Sweden. I think at the University of Lund.
Yeah.
He's a fucking legend. Like, he wrote all this stuff up 10, 15 years ago. He knew, like, he went to the school and he was like, wait a second, the school is filled with Nazi collaborators, and like did a whole bunch of very important academic research on how rotten and how lousy the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, as well as like Edmonton and Alberta and Canada, were with Nazi collaborators. And the reason I knew about Peter Savrin was because in the course of writing articles about the Nazi collaborator monuments in Edmonton, I was like reading these Per Rudling articles, and he was like, oh yeah, Peter Savrin, former chancellor, he was so embedded and successful in Canadian society. He was the former chancellor of the University of Alberta. He was president of the Progressive Conservative Association of Alberta, which was the ruling party of Alberta for 44 years. He was a vice president of the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, which was, at the time that he was the vice president of it, they were the governing party of Canada. Brian Mulroney was the prime minister. This guy got an Order of Canada. This guy, you read his fucking bio, and it's like, it's thing after thing after thing. And it's like, this guy, maybe people who knew he, maybe his friends knew, maybe fellow Ukrainian nationalists knew, but like, it's one of the things that, you wish you had a time machine, you could go back, which is like, who actually knew that Peter Savrin was a Waffen SS veteran? And if they knew, was there anything they could do about it? Because he seemed to be so powerful, so ubiquitous, so everywhere, so kind of senior and elite in society that it's like, say you even did figure out that he was a Waffen SS veteran, like, if you told anyone, would it matter?
Well, and that's the thing too. These people have a lot of money. And you look at the history of the donations, they started around 1986 when the Deschênes Commission was wrapping up, which was a whitewash, half of which we haven't seen, right? Again, it seems like the federal government's not going to go down that road.
I even looked at some of the stuff that's in there is quite damning. Like even a lot of the justification that was given at the time for why these folks were allowed into the country in the first place is like, oh, don't worry, they were just fighting on the Eastern Front. Like, not a big deal.
Like, Commission is a joke.
They weren't killing like real people or anything like that. Just commies and civilians that we don't like. So
Eastern Europeans
no big deal.
Who we don't care about.
Yeah, no, like that's literally what it says.
Well, the great Jewish Canadian historian Irving Abella said that, you know, people would try and come to Canada and they would show their Nazi tattoos and it would be like, great, this person's not a communist. Let's bring him in. And at that time, I mean, it was hard to get into Canada as a Jewish refugee, right? Um, and but these Nazis were allowed right in, and of course there are a lot of Jewish people in Canada. There are also a lot of Jewish people in Argentina, which is also famously a haven for Nazi war criminals. But in these Ukrainian who settled in Canada after the war accumulated a lot of power, and they put that power to use. I mean, Savarin set up the Canadian Institute for Ukrainian Studies, and a professor we spoke to for our piece, a Jewish professor at U of A, Karen Ball, who teaches like comparative literature with an emphasis on sort of how the Holocaust is depicted in it. She said, like, it's like the CIUS was created for the purpose of engaging in this revisionist project. And she's like, we should just shut it down. And if there's any money from those endowments left, then don't just give it back to these Nazi sympathizers, but use it to invest in memory studies to critically interrogate how the history is rewritten in a way that's convenient for perpetrators of horrible crimes. And I want to, because there's one major benefactor for the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, who's donated millions to universities across the world, not just U of A, U of T, Harvard, Columbia, LSE, a couple universities in Ukraine as well. And his name is Petro Jasic. And now it's so with the donors that we found, the 1.4 million, these were people who actually fought with the Waffen SS, right?
Yeah.
Jasic didn't. He volunteered to do so, and the Nazis said no, because they got so many volunteers, right, that they didn't know what to do with them. So some got turned down. But
can I just take a moment to talk about that for a sec? Because that does link into some Freeland stuff too. So 80,000 kind of Galicians volunteered for the 14th Waffen SS. Only 12,000 were selected. So this Peter Jasic guy, I don't know, maybe he was too skinny or too fat, or his eyes didn't work properly, for whatever reason he was turned down. But a key part of the recruitment drive to get so many of those Galician volunteers for the 14th Waffen SS was Krakow Today, the Krakow Herald, the newspaper that Christopher Freeland's grandfather worked at. Krakowski Visti, that Michael Chomiak was the managing editor of, and that's Christopher Freeland's grandfather. And they spent a lot of time and effort advertising the fact that, by the way, if you want to join the 14th Waffen SS today, it's good, clean fun. And just wanted to take that little tangent before you get back into the Peter Jasic stuff, which I think is quite important. So keep going on that.
That is a very important point, to draw that connection between the Freeland Chomiak controversy, for lack of a better term, and Hunka's standing ovation. Right. And you haven't seen anyone in the mainstream news make that connection explicitly. And it's like standing right there. Like, just ask her about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is what I've been talking about. It's like I feel like our media is so reluctant to dig at this. I think because they do know the history, not because they're ignorant of it. And like I said, I think they would have ignored this as well if it hadn't turned into a big scandal that made it so they couldn't ignore it. And this is kind of what I've been talking about, like Canada's role in promoting this revisionist version of history about the war and whitewashing these people that fought against the Soviet Union. I mean, it's not just about this one guy Hunka or even the Ukrainian diaspora, but it's Black Ribbon Day, It's this Victims of Communism monument that we're building, I guess, in Ottawa. In addition to all these SS monuments, and
which
all
also
like,
has
all
a lot of
stuff.
donations.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the names of Nazis,
I do not doubt it, including people whose names are on there as these victims, right? Not only the people that are funding this monument, the people that it's memorializing.
R.I.P. to my great grandpa Ivan. Yeah, he fell out of a
guard tower.
Yeah,
seriously.
But I want to bring it back to Jacek. He set up this the Petro Jacek Education Foundation in the 80s, and again just shelled out millions of dollars to all these Ukrainian studies programs internationally. Now, while he was doing this, a fellow by the name of John Demaniuk was on trial in Israel for allegedly being an extermination camp guard in Sobibor. He was accused of being sort of this notorious guard who was nicknamed Ivan the Terrible. And Jacek fundraised for his family, and he was found guilty. Now, that verdict was overturned 5 years later, so he was able to escape with a clean bill. But when he was convicted, this is extraordinary. I found this quote from him particularly as a Jewish person, my jaw dropped. Here's what Peter Jacek, who has his name everywhere in like academic institutions all over the world, said about Demaniuk's guilty verdict. Through 2,000 years, Jewish people paid for that, rightly or wrongly, but they did pay for that crucifixion. I believe this will have similar results in the future for this conviction. So, Jesus. First of all,
he's literally Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, he's comparing, at the time, convicted Nazi war criminal to Jesus Christ. And then he's also blaming Jews for killing Christ and saying, they have whatever's coming to them next. And again, this guy's a big money donor. And so as a result, it gets swept under the rug. And later, so he died in the early 2000s. But the foundation still exists. And when John Paul Himke, a historian at the University of Alberta, who wrote a book last year called Ukrainian Nationalists and the Holocaust, and this is his like particular field of expertise. In fact, he's Friedland's uncle, who wrote the piece on Michael Chomyak, who's his father-in-law's tenure at the Nazi collaborationist newspaper in Krakow, which Friedland edited. And he was criticizing the Ukrainian president at the time, I believe it was Lukashenko, for honoring Stepan Bandera as this hero of Ukraine, who Himke says was the foremost Ukrainian perpetrator of the Holocaust. And the Jacek Endowment Fund, or Jacek Education Foundation, wrote a letter to his dean saying that they were not pleased with his interventions on the subject. And I think that it's one thing to look at all these donations in the abstract to these schools that are increasingly cash strapped, but a consequence of this privatization of higher education that we've seen is that these donors feel like they have a right to decide what can or can't be taught. And I think in that case, Himke's dean, probably told him to tone it down a bit, but didn't discipline him or anything. But still, that has a chilling effect, right? And you see it not just in this case. There was that U of T's international human rights program, right? They hired a German academic, an international legal scholar, Valentina Azarova, who has expertise in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, in CIJA, got a tax judge who's a donor to U of T and involved with CIJA to call up the dean and be like, I don't know if you should hire this guy, or he didn't say I don't know if you should hire this guy. He just this woman, but said, if you do, there may be some problems. Nice school you have there, would be a shame if something happened to it. And I think that's an important point. But Jacek wasn't himself, right? He wasn't a fighter in the SS or the UPA like these other donors we identified are. But I
just wanted to be.
What?
He just wanted to be.
Yeah, he was a wannabe Nazi, which is like kind of worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't hack it. He couldn't do enough pull-ups. Fuck. I think
also that, sorry, just one more thing, Duncan, is that this isn't just confined to the University of Alberta. Like, we're picking on the University of Alberta because we live in Edmonton, but this is an issue with the field of Ukrainian studies internationally, which is funded by governments, but also by these wealthy Ukrainian nationalists who seek to distort this history for their broader political project, which you see playing out in Ukraine now.
I think the question that you're raising with your Peter Jacek story, which is on The Orchard, subscribe to The Orchard if you haven't, pay Jeremy money, is good. And again, could be pulled at for, again, weeks, months, years of the issue, Ukrainian studies and governments funding this kind of like Holocaust revisionism, Nazi whitewashing, however you want to frame it. I want to come back to something that I think is worth pulling more threads on as well, which is Canada and like the Duchesne Commission and the kind of the safe harbor and the safe, comfortable, well-feathered nest that so many kind of Nazis and Nazi collaborators were able to create for themselves in Canada. And I don't know, have either of you guys heard of the name Imre Finta?
No.
Does the name ring a bell?
I think you mentioned it to me this morning. So yes, it does ring a bell. But
okay, but only because it's on my brain right now. I was talking about this guy with Lev Galinkin, who's another journalist who's done fucking amazing work on this. And I was telling Lev Galinkin about Imre Finta. It's blowing his fucking mind. And it's going to blow your mind too, because this guy was a Nazi collaborator. He's from Hungary. He was a commander in Hungary during the Second World War. And he was essentially like a concentration camp, warden. He was a senior guy at a concentration camp. He was accused of being part of the Holocaust. And it kind of came out post Duchesne Commission that like when the Duchesne Commission was out there looking for Nazis who lived in Canada, this guy's name came up, Imre Finta. And everyone looked into it and it was very bad. Everyone agreed it was very bad. And he ended up being criminally charged. For, let's pull it up here.
One of the few that was.
Yeah, one of the few. He was accused of manslaughter, kidnapping, unlawful confinement, and robbery in relation to his alleged activities as a police officer, assisting the Nazis in the forced deportation of more than 8,600 Jews from the concentration camp that he worked at during the Holocaust. And so, this defense that Imre Finta made, he ended up being acquitted. Not only his acquittal was upheld in the Ontario Court of Appeal, and then the Supreme Court of Canada in 1993 upheld the acquittal as well. And the justification that the Supreme Court gives for why his acquittal should be upheld is we are literally the only country that has allowed this defense in regards to the Holocaust. I'll just read it from the Wikipedia entry. Justice Peter Corey, writing on behalf of the Supreme Court, said, quote, even when the orders are manifestly unlawful, the defense of obedience to superior orders and the peace officer defense will be available in those circumstances where the accused had no moral choice as to whether to follow the order. Among the reasons for end quote. Among the reasons for the Supreme Court accepting Finta's defense of just following orders was that there was, quote, Jewish sentiment in favor of the Allied forces, and Finta unquote, and Finta himself believed that, quote, the Jews were subversive and disloyal to the war efforts of Hungary. So not only did the Supreme Court of Canada in a 4-3 decision say just following orders is actually a defense in the Holocaust, they were like, actually, you were justified because the Jews were disloyal.
Yeah,
that is
because he happened to believe
Canadian,
the Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy about that.
This is Canada. Like, this is so fucking Canada that, like, our Supreme Court justices, our smartest, brightest, most effective fucking judges are able to look at just following orders and be like, yeah, no, just following orders is actually
right. It's as if the Nuremberg trials never happened.
Yeah,
and that's the same with the Deschênes Commission. They said, oh, well, being a member of the Waffen SS isn't itself a crime. Well, Nuremberg,
it is.
Yeah, the Nuremberg trial said that it is a criminal organization and as a whole, right?
And the follow-on effects from this, I do want to go on to this, but like the follow-on effects from this were fucking super fucked up because at that point, the Canadian government just abandoned criminal prosecutions of all Nazi war criminals, war collaborators who were in Canada.
Well, what's the point when that defense has been established as being effective? Like, that's just you get out of jail free card basically for Nazis.
Yeah, the Supreme Court set the precedent that just following orders actually is an effective defense for Nazis and Nazi collaborators. And so after that point, the only thing that the government of Canada ended up doing with these Nazi war collaborators was going after them through the immigration system and trying to get them deported. And so this is one of Canada's kind of greatest shames that has never really been kind of fully excavated. And you know, maybe now, you know, one of the tendrils of this kind of hunka thing is being like, oh yeah, Canada not only is, put this in the rank of kind of Canada's great shames, or Komagata Maru. What was the ship of Jewish people who was turned away? The St. Louis, or what's the name? Anyone help me out here? The boat full of Jewish refugees who was turned away in the
I don't remember the name.
Ship.
Wasn't it the St. Louis?
Yeah, I thought it was.
The None is Too Many ship, the St. Louis, the Komagata Maru, the internment of Japanese, the internment of Ukrainians. Like this, I think that this decision of just following orders being an actual legal defense and us being a safe harbor for Nazis is has to be up there as one of Canada's most fucked up things that it's done.
While prior to the war as well, not letting more Canadians go and enlist in the Republican forces in the Spanish Civil War too. I think that's part of that story also, right? You had the Mackenzie Papineau Battalion going over there, and then you had the Canadian government being like, no more. No, you can't go over to Spain to fight fascism. No, we're against that, you know? That's part of it. I think that's part of the narrative as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a reflection too of this like imperial arrogance where international law only exists insofar as it's useful to our political ends, and once it's not, then it doesn't matter, right? And you know, I think that's an important thing to consider in the present, right? That this is an early manifestation of this international law for thee but not for me sentiment. Now Oldvich in the chat has a question for us. Do you, I know you're the host, Rob, so
well, it says question for Jeremy and Duncan regarding education and Ukrainian influence in Winnipeg, and I assume in other centers of large diasporas. There are Ukrainian immersion elementary middle schools. I wonder if you found any evidence of Nazi or nationalist influence in their foundations or in their curriculums.
So the short answer to that, and I mean, I can't speak for Duncan, but is no. I haven't, it's not speaking Ukrainian. It does put you at a disadvantage when you're researching these things because there's a lot of like primary sources that you just can't read. But I have seen I have seen evidence of like this Ukrainian nationalist summer camps, like the one Chrystia Freeland attended, doing that, and I would be shocked if the schools weren't the same. I mean, growing up as a Jewish kid in Toronto who went to a Jewish day school and Jewish summer camp, the sort of nationalist, the sort of Zionist brainwashing there. I mean, when I'm reading about this Ukrainian stuff, it reminds me a lot of that. This sort of rewriting history in, of course, not the history of World War II, but the post-war history, in a way that is politically convenient and indoctrinating youth in that mentality.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting thread to pull on. I think that's a good question. The places that we know are like where the kind of kids are taught and indoctrinated and given, fed this ideology about, this memory project around these heroes is definitely in these summer camps. There's an organization called Plast, which is like essentially like Ukrainian Boy Scouts or Girl Guides, or for my particular evangelical upbringing, Stockades. Where like they talk about, I remember Lev Golinkin sent me something where it was like in Plast they were like, pretend to be on the run like the UPA or whatever, and the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, and so that is thing. I mean, Peter Saverin was also instrumental in creating these kind of programs, but like the Ukrainian language program. But I think those are like the Ukrainian language immersion and like these other things. Like this is an interesting conversation that we haven't had yet, which is the question of kind of like multiculturalism and multiculturalism's role, like official Canadian multiculturalism and its role in kind of letting this Ukrainian nationalist Nazi collaborator stuff bloom and blossom. And Per Rudling has some interesting papers on this that I would recommend, because like the government of Alberta gave a bunch of money to Ukrainian Youth Unity Council to put up the Roman Shukovich statue, for instance, the Nazi collaborator who took part in the Holocaust, and like and even the art that we used for the story in the piece. It's a picture of a signing of a contract between a guy named Manoli Lupul, who essentially wrote a book on Canadian multiculturalism, and Vladimir Kubiovich, literally the guy sig-hailing at the 1943 like founding party for the Waffen SS. And the paper that I was reading about that particular signing and the context around it is that was really like a coming together of like not necessarily nationalists. Like I don't think Manoli Lupul and his book about multiculturalism is Nazi apology. I don't think he was a Ukrainian nationalist of the kind of ilk that Kubiovich and Peter Saverin were, but like that it was a way for those groups to kind of come together and be like, okay, look, maybe we don't agree on this Nazi stuff or Stepan Bandera, but we do agree that it's important that our kids keep learning Ukrainian. And I don't think these Ukrainian language programs are necessarily a bad thing, but it is interesting. It would be interesting to kind of pull those threads and excavate them, and also just to kind of excavate kind of official Canadian multiculturalism's role, official Canada multicultural policy, in how it kind of let and encouraged the stuff that we're seeing now, this 3 generations long memory project glorifying Nazi collaborators, to kind of let that continue. Kind of unabated and really without any criticism or pushback from wider society.
Yeah, and I think that's just been my takeaway over this whole thing. Is just that like I find it so hard to believe that. I get that there's maybe people in the house that are not sure about the history, or just weren't fucking paying attention. But like the idea that Freeland doesn't know, considering this context, considering none of this is new, there was this scandal over this in the 80s that led to the investigations in the 80s during Mulrooney. There was a big half an hour like CBC investigative piece I was looking at the other day from like 30 years ago that was on this. There was a big 60 Minutes piece on this from the 90s that talked about it. Like this history is hidden, but it's not completely secret. Like it's been out in the open for a while. So I find it really hard to believe that people just didn't understand or didn't realize the context of honoring someone like this in Parliament. It seems to me like and maybe this is conspiratorial and not journalism, but fortunately I'm not a journalist, so I can say these kind of things. But it does seem to me that this was just like the next kind of logical step in this historical revisionist project that kind of just blew up in their faces. And I just refuse to believe that, at least, especially when it comes to Chrystia Freeland, maybe Rocha's just totally ignorant about it. Maybe Trudeau is ignorant about it. I don't really think so, but maybe. I certainly don't think Chrystia Freeland is ignorant about it. And you know who else?
I can believe Trudeau's ignorant of it.
Yeah.
Like he's not an intellectual heavyweight. His father was, for all his flaws, but I mean, Justin Trudeau is big rich kid energy. Right? Yeah, I mean, of course,
Himbo.
I mean, Freeland, Davide Mistracci had a piece in the Maple last week and a follow-up today. That's like, if Freeland doesn't know anything about what she studied her entire life, then that's also a problem. Right?
Yeah, that's not a good, that's not good. Yeah.
And that was the thing with Polyev, having this really nasty partisan statement as he's wont to do, is like, okay, so you were tricked into applauding someone who was announced as having fought Russia during World War II. That, like, weird flex, but okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you're a dumbass.
Yeah. Well, and this is all part of this, it's part of this historical revisionist project, or promoting this kind of double genocide idea, where it's like you hear someone fighting Russians during World War II, and you're like, oh, well, the Soviets were bad, just as bad as the Nazis. That's basically been the narrative that's been carefully crafted over the last several generations. So, okay, yeah, I believe that. But like, that in and of itself is a really fucked up and horrible thing that's happened as well. And I find it very interesting as well when you talk about like someone like Justin Ling and all the like liberals that have talked about this nuance about the fucking SS, and like, oh, we got to be nuanced because Ukraine and the Soviets, and they had to choose between these two dictators, and they just had no choice but to volunteer for the SS. And I think it's really interesting and illustrative how this, like, the deployment of nuanced is so careful depending on where that nuance is deployed. And we want to be nuanced when it comes to the fucking SS, but do we want to be nuanced about the Soviet Union, about the Soviet Union's role in Ukraine, about the Soviet Union who defeated fascism? Like, do we want to be nuanced about that? No, we have to just accept fully black and white. The Soviet Union was evil and bad, and it's totally understandable that people wanted to join the SS. That's when we have to be nuanced. But of course, we never want to be nuanced when it comes to talking about what was going on in the USSR in the first place.
Yeah, well, there's that line in the Ling piece that's like, usually
yes,
usually you can just scream Nazi and that's the end of the conversation.
But usually you can just say Waffen SS and that's the end.
And it's like, why, Justin? Like, and I find it hard to parse his motivations in doing this. But I think ultimately, he's a liberal imperialist, right? And so he thinks we are on the right side, right? There was no coup in Bolivia. It wasn't a coup.
Yeah.
And other big brain takes he's had, because our intentions are always pure. And like, yeah, we make mistakes.
Yeah.
But we have to be nuanced. We can't be nuanced about Russia or Iran or any like China or any official enemies. But when it comes to us, there's always just layers and layers of nuance.
Yeah.
That only serve to obscure like reality.
I have to go, but I do want to leave. I think I'm glad that we came back to this point, because I do want to kind of end on it, at least my time with you, Rob and Jeremy, is that like there's no need for nuance when it comes to veterans, especially volunteers with the Waffen SS, people who purposely chose to join a unit. His primary job was riding around Eastern Europe and killing people for the Third Reich. The people like Justin Ling, people like that idiot, I don't know the person's name, Keir Giles, the guy who wrote the Politico piece that was like, the Waffen SS, really, what was so bad, really, if you get down to it? They were fighting communists. There is, if you or any of your family members, any of your acquaintances feel the need to introduce any nuance to the question of people who've fought with the Waffen SS, there's no need. You don't need to do it. Let me just stop that right there.
And I feel like recently, historically, like it was not controversial to be like, no, that was just bad. There's no need to equivocate or to talk about that.
People are like,
this feels like a new phenomenon.
Really people are like, you're being really black and white about this issue. Really, yes, no, bad, good. And it's like, yes, that's
Yeah.
you can do that with the Waffen SS. It's a black and white issue.
Yeah.
They were unequivocally evil. They participated in the Holocaust. They did the bidding of the Third Reich. They participated in atrocities. They swore an oath to the death to defend Adolf Hitler. They had Heinrich Himmler as their commanding officer. These were bad people.
Yeah, this is 1943 as well. Like this is 1943. This is after Stalingrad. They jumped on a sinking ship. That's how much they loved being Nazis. Like,
yeah, and this sort of this nuance mongering it's a lot easier to do these mental gymnastics with UPA, right, in the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, because they liked the Nazis, but the Nazis didn't like them. But it's literally the Waffen SS. You don't get much more Nazi than that. and I think it's worth emphasizing as well in these conversations, because you don't see a lot in the Canadian media, but I saw the BBC noted this. Thousands of Ukrainians volunteered to join the Nazis. Millions fought in the Red Army.
Yeah.
And so the entire narrative that, these Western Ukrainians were so desperate because of the horrible oppression of the Soviet Union and, this Holodomor narrative about the famines,
which has been promoted by a lot of these groups in academia that are funded by these exact Ukrainian nationalists, by the way.
Yeah. The people who were victimized by that fought, because they were victimized. The question is, what was it? Was
the intentionality of it?
Yeah. And there's no evidence that they're certainly not on the scale of like the Holocaust, but this was in East Ukraine, right, where that happened. So these aren't the people who suffered under the Russian famines, and millions of Ukrainians who did suffer still could see the lesser of two evils. Mind you, a lot of them didn't really have a choice but to fight in the Red Army. But again, millions of Ukrainians fought on the side of the communists against Nazi Germany. Thousands fought with the Germans, and because of the power of these Ukrainian diaspora organizations, we're focused on having to argue with those who defend the thousands and overlook the millions, and I think that's an important point to note.
I got to leave, but this is my last thought, which is that, like 80,000 people, 80,000 kind of Galicians tried to join the 14th Waffen SS, 12,000 served, somewhere between 3 to 6 million, Ukrainians joined the Red Army and served in the Red Army. Those 12,000 people joined the army that ran Auschwitz, and the millions of Ukrainians joined the army that liberated Auschwitz. And I think that is an important thing to end it on. But thank you for having me on, Rob. It's
Thanks,
good to
Duncan.
see you, Jeremy. And I got to go.
Yeah, see you soon, Duncan.
Goodbye.
So I won't keep you too much longer, Jeremy, but I just wanted to finish up on another point I was talking about before, where how I find it hard to believe that especially Freeland was ignorant of this history, but the other person in that room that I have a really hard time believing was ignorant of the history was Zelensky himself, who was also applauding. And the idea that he wasn't aware of this connection, I also think is really requires a big stretching of the imagination. And that's one thing that I would like for someone to ask him about. I don't think he's really I don't think anyone's even asked him about this incident. If anything, our people in our media class or political class have talked about how we embarrassed the Ukrainian delegation and we're so sorry for the pain that we caused, including him. But no one's really asked him about these Galician SS divisions. I know he's denounced them like in the past, prior to the invasion taking place, when people would march in Kiev to celebrate these folks. But like, I find it interesting that no one's asked him about this, and the reason that like he could never really comment on it is because there's a lot of people that they're relying on to defend Ukraine right now during this invasion that do want to whitewash this history and do uphold people like Hunka and the Waffen SS and the UPA as being these like nationalist heroes. And that's
Well,
why I think
exactly.
it's kind of inseparable. I think it's kind of inseparable, this kind of Ukrainian nationalism, which has been gone into overdrive over the last couple of years, with this kind of revisionism and with kind of this whitewashing of this brutal history. I think you can't really separate these two things. I don't know if that's controversial, but that I can't really escape that feeling.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I mean, Zelensky has a gun to his head, right? I mean, he was elected overwhelmingly on a platform of making peace with Russia and implementing the Minsk Accords, but the nationalist right in Ukraine, which isn't just the neo-Nazis, it's also, you know, more conservative elements with support from diaspora organizations, said no way. And so and I mean, again, Zelensky's grandparents, unlike Freeland's, fought with the Red Army against the Nazis. And you know, it's sort of, I mean, it's sort of tragic. I mean, we can debate whether Zelensky was sincere when he was talking about making peace with Russia, but I think many Ukrainians did. But that's, I mean, that's what war does to people, right? And I think the Russia's sort of denazifying narrative, at a certain point, I mean, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because, I mean, the left, of course, in Ukraine as elsewhere, but especially in Ukraine, which, you know, is a former communist country, has no institutional power, and anymore, and that allows the when people are radicalized in a time of crisis, like a war that I mean, I don't know if our positions on the war in Ukraine are, you know, exactly identical, but I'm sure they're not too far off from each other. But
I mean, my basic position is that I think the war is fucking horrible. I don't like Putin. I don't think Putin has the best of intentions or has a lot of credibility to carry out this denazification process. But I also acknowledge, because it's just fact, that we have been fucking around in Ukraine for at least the last 10 years. There's been plenty of reporting that we've been funding and arming these exact fascist militias in eastern Ukraine. Like, that's a real thing. And I like, as much as you can denounce Russia or Putin, but like, I also don't think it's completely unreasonable. This is my big controversial stance here. I also don't think it's that unreasonable for Russia to view that as being a threat to their security. And that doesn't mean that I think the invasion is good or that war is wonderful or that Putin is a great guy or that horrible, horrible things haven't happened in this war. But I think the big thing in the West is that we haven't taken responsibility for pushing things to that point.
Right. And that, you know, it drives me. So I think our positions are quite close on this.
Yeah.
I would, because at the end of the day, I mean, it was Putin who decided to invade, right? But again, when I see Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, in like, it's one thing you're reading an opinion piece and it's like, yeah, okay, this is some Atlantic Council shithead, but when it's in like a piece of reporting where you know, reporters are constantly told they're not allowed to
for sure, not allowed to editorialize.
I mean, that's not a fact. It was provoked. That doesn't justify it.
Yeah.
But of course it was, everything's provoked in geopolitics, right? But this liberal interventionist and also neoconservative mindset doesn't see that. They don't see geopolitics. It's just, there's the good guys, us, and the bad guys, them, and everything we do is with the best of intentions, and everything they do is based on malice and hatred for all of our values. And I mean, yeah, it wasn't right. I mean, before Putin, like, it's not like Gorbachev was like, oh yeah, let Ukraine into NATO, right?
Yeah.
Or even Yeltsin, right? That I mean, they all saw it as a threat. And so I mean, this was something that the US and Western European leaders, I mean, this was a path they set us on a long time ago. And it's an important, it is really tiresome when you're talking about this thing to have to start like being like, I'm against the war.
Yeah.
But there are people Right. I mean, there are people, we both know
Yeah,
some of them.
they've taken the full like Russian chauvinist kind of.
Yeah. No. This is an SMO. It's not a war. Well, what's the difference?
Yeah.
What's the difference? None of them will say. And this sort of mentality, I think we're both smeared as tankies just for asking these questions. But those people do exist. But that mentality to me is just neoconservatism in reverse.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't have a lot of time for that, but those people have no influence. So I'm also not interested in going out of my way to denounce them, but I do think that we ought to take like a principled, nuanced perspective.
We can be nuanced about this, but of course you're not allowed to be nuanced when you can be nuanced about the SS, but you can't be nuanced about how this war started or like whether we were involved in starting it in the first place. But that we can't be nuanced about. That we must be black and white about. You talk about the way that the media engages in this kind of editorializing, which they're always taught not to do. I think that's another example. I was watching a clip, I think from Global News, where they talked about this Hunka incident, and they're talking about Canadian Parliament giving standing ovation to this Ukrainian Nazi SS guy. And then immediately the next sentence, they're like, Vladimir Putin has falsely claimed that there's connection with Ukraine and fascism. But it's like, you can't do a story about a Ukrainian Nazi SS veteran getting applauded in Canadian Parliament and then suggest there's just no connection with Ukrainian nationalism and this kind of fascist revisionism. Like these are two completely mutually exclusive things. Like, again, you don't have to think that Putin is a great guy, but like we literally proved that those accusations, that there is merit to them by the very fact that we've done that. And it's not even just about the Hunka thing, but the nonstop stream of like Sonnenrads and SS symbols and Bandera images and UPA flags. It's just been this nonstop fire hose of these kind of images anytime we get images from these like frontline fighting that's going on. So it's like, obviously there is a connection, and whether you think Putin has credibility to engage in this process or not, like you can't just say, oh, it's false to claim that when it's like all of the evidence that we've seen that there is indeed a connection. I mean, that's just, I don't understand how people can hold these two thoughts.
Yeah, but I think also since the war that those sort of hyper nationalist sentiments have been heightened in Ukraine. And again, when we're talking about this, I know Duncan was like, "Yeah, we're not here to talk about the war." It's like, I want to talk about the war.
Yeah, I think it's kind of inseparable.
But yeah, I mean, you can separate the two, but like, why? I mean, why would you? That's not a dig at you, Duncan. I see you're hanging out in the chat. But I get it. It's like opening up a whole other can of worms. But I think it's sort of a can of worms that comes from another can of worms. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I mean, people are suffering horribly, and if our goal is to put an end to this war, we can't just be cheerleading the side that's being invaded, and just uncritically just throwing weapons at them. Of course, we should be giving humanitarian aid. We should be letting refugees in, but we should be treating refugees who don't look like us in the same way as we treat Ukrainian refugees. But at the end of the day, the powers that be don't want that, because both in Russia and in NATO countries, they want to see this war go on forever. It's great. I mean, I covered the Halifax Security Forum like digitally for the Maple last year. And the president of the forum, whose name I forget, opened it up the remark saying about how 9/11 started this era of democracy promotion, which tragically ended with the withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2022. Or was it 2021, late 2021?
I believe so.
Yeah. But 2023, February, start of a new era. And he was talking about like it was amazing that Russia did this. Because again, as we've been discussing, NATO has been baiting Russia for so long, and they took that bait because Russia wants this war to go on too, because it allows the ruling oligarchic elite, the ruling faction of oligarchs, to maintain power, and it's good for increasing energy prices, even as their pipeline gets blown up, probably by Ukraine, and keeps the arms manufacturers making money. And the same is true from NATO, right? NATO
and BlackRock set to make a killing too with the reconstruction and the rebuilding of whatever as well. These like horrific,
yeah, exactly. It's disaster capitalism.
Yeah.
And I mean, so it's easy for us to point at Russia and say, stop this, what you're doing is wrong. And that, you know, I think that's true. But we also have to look at our role, not just in provoking it, but fueling it.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally agree, Jeremy. And I feel like if you acknowledge the role that we played in provoking it, like whether you know, while with the caveats or whatever, that it doesn't excuse anything and it's not justification, if you just acknowledge the role that we played in provoking this thing and have played in extending it, then the only possible solution that's left is to have some kind of a negotiated settlement, peace talks, a ceasefire, and figure out things from there, and ending the war and stopping the killing, stopping the meat grinder. There's civilians being killed. There's people being conscripted to get thrown to the front lines with no training and getting immediately just like vaporized. Like, it's horrific. So if you just acknowledge that this is not just this one-sided, unprovoked thing and that we did play a role in it, that's the only option that's left, is to have some kind of a settlement and figure things out through diplomacy. But if you do accept this framing that it is the unprovoked, illegal Russian invasion and we had nothing to do with it, and like Ukraine good, Russia bad, and if you accept that framing, the Voldemort theory of this, then the only solution is, well, we just need to keep funneling more and more weapons, because that's the only thing. We can't make a peace deal when the good guys have just been unjustifiably attacked and have been unjustifiably invaded. But that's it. That's where most people are, because that's what the idea of this that's been promoted in our media and by our political figures. Whereas people like you and I, who have tried to inject nuance into this and talk about the role that NATO played, both with NATO expansion and with arming these, and the Euromaidan, and with arming these Ukrainian militias over the last 10 years. That's exactly why they don't want that viewpoint getting out, because when you accept the fact that we have responsibility for this, that means we have responsibility to just like stop the conflict, stop funding it, start promote peace talks, and end the conflict like that. But unfortunately, the viewpoint that we're talking about, even after this whole scandal, is still really marginalized and is still not really being discussed or promoted in our media. So it looks like it is just an indefinite war zone for the foreseeable future, which is, I think, a horrible tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it ending anytime soon. There's way too much money for profiteers to squeeze out of the suffering of Ukrainians. I mean, at a certain point, it's like, no, Ukraine's not going to get Crimea back. They're not. And I mean, Russia's claims to Crimea are, a lot more valid.
Just simply ask the people in Crimea what they want to do. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, but I don't think people are ready to hear the answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how credible a referendum under, with a gun to your head is, but I mean, most people in Crimea are Russian. I mean, it was given to Ukraine under the Soviet Union. So, I mean, if we're talking about like decommunization, then I mean, it seems that maybe it should be under Russian control, and then the Donbass. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, people there are Russian speakers, and they're a distinct society within Ukraine. So, perhaps they're is a Quebec type, like a federalist situation, which goes against Ukraine's constitution, which emphasizes that it's a unitary state.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever read through Ukraine's constitution, which
No.
Chrystia Freeland's mom helped write, who was also interestingly a big like socialist and feminist like activist in Edmonton, but she was still a devout Ukrainian nationalist. And I mean, most of it is like liberal, democratic, like fluff. But then there's this one line about how the state's role is to protect the gene pool of Ukrainians, which is wild.
Interesting.
And I think that really gets at sort of the contradictions of modern Ukraine. But yeah, I mean that's but Zelensky's not in a position to negotiate because again, Zelensky has a gun to his head, and if if he's not in a position to negotiate, then I mean, I think it's on us as the rest of the world to negotiate over his head and be like, okay, like Crimea is off the table. We're going to work something out with the Donbass that both sides can live with. And then Ukraine stops its war and Russia stops its war and Ukraine will never join NATO. Like that, I mean, this all could have been prevented by just saying.
Well, that's the kind of frustrating thing. Yeah, that's what the whole Minsk agreements was supposed to be about. But we've seen people that were involved in those agreements that have kind of openly talked about how they never had any intention of following through on them, and we're just buying time to continue pumping arms into the country. And that's the thing. I think when you talk about these eastern regions, like there was an opportunity that was there to kind of create that kind of a Quebec style situation, but I guess my concern now is that ship has probably sailed. And if you try to now, after the last 2 years of being in this conflict, you tell Russia, okay, now pull out of there, and now we're going to go and honor this distinct society. That I think is probably going to be a pretty tough sell. So probably another example of why this war is not going to be stopping anytime soon, considering that's the gulf between the two sides at this point.
Yeah, and I'm getting dragged a bit in the chat for my.
It's okay. There must be some Putin sympathizing tankies have infiltrated the community. Unfortunately, very concerning.
Yeah. No, and that's fine. And again, this more pro-Russian perspective than maybe I think is interesting, and I do think we should engage with it rather than just shut it out. Like, I'm much more interested in what people who do take Russia's side in this conflict, although I don't agree with it, have to say than your fucking run-of-the-mill neocon, right? No need to apologize to me in the chat. That's cool. I'm glad we need to have these conversations. But I would just say that when a country invades another territory and they supervise a referendum on whether that territory wants to join their country, I mean, there's pressure on them, and the U.S. does it all the time too, as people have pointed out. But my view is that as a great power, I think we ought, which Russia is, or at least aspires to be, I think we ought to be morally consistent in applying the same standards to them as we do to ourselves as leftists.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think we're all critical of how the West provoked this war, and that it needs to end.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it too. We're in total agreement on that, which is just sad because I think the people that have talked about ending the war get framed as being these like Russian appeasing genocide deniers or whatever, while there's the people that are just promoting turning this region into just a total endless war zone for the benefit of like Lockheed Martin shareholders or BlackRock shareholders. They're the peaceful, progressive liberals. You know, I think it's a really bizarre framing that is kind of very backwards that has emerged over the last year and a half or so. But Jeremy, I really appreciate all the work you've done exposing this story. I think you're one of the main people that helped. Like, really, I don't think you get enough credit for this. One of the main people that helped turn this into a big international scandal. So I really do appreciate the journalism that you've done, the research that you've done on this. The piece that you did with Duncan, I'm going to link it again in the chat, is excellent. It's the University of Alberta's $1.4 million Nazi problem on the Progress Report. I'm going to link it there. Thanks, Jeremy, for the work that you do, and thanks for coming on the show. Always appreciate talking with you.
Yeah, no, always a pleasure to talk to you, Rob. And we got to get you back on one of the podcasts one of these days, because it's been a while. And always great to be here on TRRS. That's what the cool kids are.
That's right. I even have a spinny globe. You see my spinny globe?
Oh, yeah. That's so cool. It makes you look like an official,
I know,
like news network.
I know.
And then instead of like a ticker with, really superficial headlines, you got the chat and
exactly even better.
The conversations that go on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you're not sponsored by arms manufacturers, which I think is probably one of the best things about this show.
I think so. A lot of the think tank experts that get invited onto our media to weigh in on this and other similar subjects often are. So I like to make sure that people understand that that's not what's going on over here.
And it's never disclosed. Funny.
Yeah, it is. It is very funny. It's something very frustrating, actually, that I continually talk about. But yes, thanks, Jeremy. Amazing conversation. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, Jeremy Appel, that was fantastic. And Duncan Kenney as well. It was really great to have both of them come on here. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. You should get one arms manufacturer as a sponsor, a small one. Mom and Pop Weapons. They just make one arm. One arm per year. One of the smaller ones. That'd be fine. Anyway, very good conversation. Again, I appreciate the work that Jeremy and Duncan both do on this. Artisanal arms manufacturing. That's right. Or give me someone they actually make prosthetic arms. Arms manufacturer. Get a Chinese weapons manufacturer because show some Dongfeng missiles. It would be so funny if TRRS was indeed sponsored by the Chinese, whatever state-owned missile company manufactures those Dongfeng missiles. I had to do a little segment. Like some people do segments for like stamps.com or whatever, or therapy apps. I do a little 5-minute little pitch segment. Dongfeng missiles, their newest hypersonic model, capable of striking any NATO country within moments, at a moment's notice. I give it my full endorsement.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I give it my full endorsement. Thank you, GMO Radio, for the gifted sub to Raytheon Official. Thank you. Thank you for that. Happy to bring in Raytheon into the community. And folks, if you can, I'm going on almost 3 hours into the stream now. That was a really great conversation with Jeremy and Duncan. If you can, considering I'm not sponsored by arms manufacturers or anyone else for that matter, I'm only sponsored by you, the chat, the viewer, the listener. And as you know, doing this show, I absolutely love to do it. It's my favorite thing to do. I love to hang out with you each and every day and talk about these subjects and try and shed some light on some of these this subject matter and give it this kind of a analysis, materialist analysis. The only way that I'm able to do that, folks, is if the little number at the bottom of the screen goes up every single day. It is both my blessing and my burden to come on here every day, and I must make the little number at the bottom of the screen go up. So if you can, folks, please subscribe to TRRS. It is $5 per month. It's completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account. Support this show, support the work I do, support the community, get all the amazing and incredible tiny little images that this community offers. You can subscribe or gift subs to move up in the friendship triangle system. That's Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. You can move up and down and become an elite tier member by
count on me. You're gonna have good old
gifting
Rob to,
more
talk you
than
through all this.
5 subs.
If you sponsor Rob, you are the bomb.
you are the bomb. That's right. That's right. Thank you, Low Observable Goat, for 26 months of tier 1. I appreciate that. Hopefully Raytheon can rub a few nickels together and know how to renew their sub. I would like to see some support from them, actually.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Envy Adams, thank you for the 2 gifted subs. Very, very kind of you,
You can count on
Envy
me.
Adams.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thank you, Barbara Loden, as well. New Elite Tier Friendship Triangle community member, Barbara Loden. Thank you for the gifted sub as well.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub to Big Shiny Takes. Eric, friend of the show as well. And we do have a little hype train going now, folks. So not only can you support this program, but you can also get access to special little tiny little images that are exclusive to this hype train right now as well. Doesn't that sound nice? So if you can, please continue subscribing. We are a mere 27 subs away. We're a mere 27 subs away from the goal. We're a mere 27 subs away from the goal, and I'm not going anywhere right now. I'm going to stick around for another hour or so I'm not leaving or anything like that. We've talked a lot about Burkina Faso on the show over the last couple of weeks, not like when the coup in Niger was going on. We've talked about them less, but I don't think it's surprising that they did designate a Sankara a national hero, considering they have a dedicated Sankarist like as their prime minister now. They're directly drawing influence from that movement, both ideologically and in terms of the sort of iconography of it as well. So I think that's really cool and something we should applaud and support. And that's right. Rum's a devout centrist. So if you believe in this kind of like centrist commentary that I do, please subscribe. Again, only a mere meager 27 subs to go to get to the goal. We got 3 minutes left in this level of the hype train. So if anyone else can subscribe to TRRS, please. Every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. Okay? Every little bit helps, and it's the only way, folks, that I am able to continue doing this program each and every day. And I have more to talk about, this Ukraine-Nazi connection and Canada's role in that, and there's more to talk about there. But I must take a brief moment to try and make the number go up. The number must go up, folks. So what else? What else do I have to do? I don't know. What do I got to do here? Huh? It's Friday. It's Friday. We got 2 minutes left to go in this level 2 hype train. We can try and get to level 3. I know just a few moments ago I said it was a certain number of subs, and now, a few minutes later, it's only even closer. It's tantalizingly close. 27 subs to go.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Then make it 26. Thank you, Sikalufakis, for that. I'm a centrist in the Sino-Soviet split. USSR and China both have good ideas. I agree. Yeah, I'm definitely centrist in that as well.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Part Ian, thank you for the gifted sub as well. Very close. We're 80% of the way through this level 2 hype train. 1 or 2 more subs would do it to get to this level 3. Would get to level 3 of this hype train. I heard there was zero connection between the Nazis, Ukrainian nationalists, Canadians, and the U.S. I heard differently, but I mean that's what centrism is. I mean you can find maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. So folks, a mere 25 subs to go. A mere 25 subs to go. I meant to finally to actually create the 20 sub alert yesterday. Not that I feel like that's going to be used very much, but I this morning I did plan on actually creating that alert. I have the video and I have the sound thing. We will probably never see it, but you know, I can still create it. That doesn't mean that I can't create it. Some fucking NATO shill was on Twitter talking nonsense. Well, we got a lot of that lately. We got a lot of that. Oh boy. This needs to grow in a little bit. This needs to grow in just a little bit. I think it's going to be pretty good once we get to where we need to be with this. And the hype train is no longer going, folks, but we can still make the number go up. We're a mere 25 subs away. That's barely anything. It's barely anything. Only 25 itsy bitsy subs to go to get to the goal. I can taste it. It's within reach. It's within reach. I can feel it. I can taste it. I can almost touch it. It's tangible. It's almost in my fingers. It's in my hands. Ugh. This is always the part where I'm worried about when people come to see the journalism that I do on here. They're like, what the hell is this? What the hell is going on here? Rob was a centrist until they started besmirching those beloved Canadian heroes, and I have no choice but to support the SS. You've left me no choice. Jesus. Sorry, I can't stop messing around with it now. I'm sorry. I can't stop messing around with it. Well, I thought we would, those rude Russian disinformation spreaders saying the SS was bad. Actually, I know, it's unbelievable. Don't they know we need to be nuanced about the SS? We need to be nuanced about that. I thought for the rest of the day we could take a look at some more of this like Moss Robeson content while we're exploring this whole connection. I mean, Moss has been doing the work and kind of uncovering this. So I kind of thought for the last hour we could maybe do that. Before I take a little break, though, does anyone else want to support TRRS and the work that I do on here? Remember, folks, the only way that I'm able to do this each and every day, this show that you know and love, apparently some people love it. I don't know. I don't know why, but they do. And the only way it is able to continue to exist is if people subscribe and give subs and support this program every day. And I hope you let me indulge this for a few moments. Believe me, it's my least favorite part of doing this, when I must take time to try and will the number to go up with my force of my rhetoric. I must use my force of will to just make the number go up. I hope you all understand that that's a sort of something that I have to do as a host of this program, because it's the only way that I'm able to do that. So before I take a little break, I have to Vulcan mind meld you. My mind to your mind. Your thoughts to my thoughts. You want to subscribe. You want to subscribe to TRRS.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Anon, for the 3 gifted subs. That's very, very kind of you.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you for using your own free will to independently make the decision.
Rob to talk you through all this.
To independently make the decision to subscribe to this program. I appreciate that very much. For you to completely independently, with your own free will, deciding to do this. My mind to your mind. Your thoughts to my thoughts. You want to subscribe. You want to subscribe to TRRS. You want to become an elite tier community member in the Friendship Triangle system. Not only do you want to support this, but it would make you, it wouldn't even be good for me, it would be good for you. You're realizing now, it would be good for you. It would be a good thing for you to do, to join this community and support this community. It would improve your own life. It's not about me. It's not about me, it's about you. It's about making a decision, your own self-actualization. We're all free thinkers here, that's right. I'm trying to eye poke me. I'm trying to mind meld. Your mind to my mind. Your thoughts to my thoughts. Really impressed how well that worked. Well, I gotta try everything. You weren't around a few weeks ago, Eric, when I did the whole Victorian orphan routine. That was a big hit with the community as well. I did the whole Victorian orphan thing. That was a big one. I can't go fully commit to it right now because it's like a method acting thing. I've got to really commit to it. Maybe we need some Gina. I'm definitely going to be returning to more Gina content whenever there's more conspiracy stuff to talk about. I do think like since we've been spending the day talking about this like Canada, Ukraine, Nazi connection, I think we should just stick on that for the last hour. But let me just take a little 5-minute break so I can go to the bathroom, okay? And I'll do that. I'll come back in a few minutes. And that's what we will do for the rest of the day. How does that sound? How does that sound to you? Too bad Dancing Gina probably gets muted. It's funny because I tried to take that clip. I tried to take that clip of me dancing with Gina and put it on Twitter, but it got muted when I tried to. It wasn't muted in the clip, but then once I tried to download it, it got muted. So I had to take the extra step. I had to record my screen to capture it so I could share it with people because I knew people would enjoy that. Okay. Give me a moment here. That's small. Okay, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, folks. I'm just going to take a 5-minute break. I'll come back. We'll hang out for another hour. Then we will say goodbye. Where's my music? Play my music. I'll be back in a minute. Hello. Okay, how's it going? I'm back. I had a little lie down. Had just a little bit of a lie down, folks. Just for a few minutes. We love a little lie down, don't we? Middle of the day, take a little break, little lie down. Ow.
The books you start.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
What the? Comrade Bushy, thanks for the 5 gifted subs. Comrade Bushy, always bailing me out. Always bailing me out. Thank you so much. I really appreciate those 5 gifted subs. Hell yeah. Moving Comrade Bushy into 2nd place on the gifted sub leaderboard for the month. I played hooky from work today. 45 hours a week is too damn much work. Couldn't agree more, yeah. We gotta have 28 or 32. That sounds about right to me. That sounds about right to me. 28 hours a week, maybe 32, and that's it. I think that's enough. Our fucking ancestors, like in the height of the labor movement, when they, at the dawning of the 40-hour work week, they were like, this is just temporary. We're going to bring that down to 32 or a little bit more, you know? They all thought by 2023 we'd be having, you know, less than that even. 32 if you're nasty. Exactly. Anyway, I support you playing hooky from work. We love our brave time theft soldiers on this program. So we got about another, how long is this? 53 minutes? We will try to get through this whole thing. I don't totally know how possible it's going to be. We will try to get through this whole Moss Robeson video about this subject. And in fact, with no further ado, let's get this started. This is Moss Robeson's video, WAZ and the Magic Circle. This is a found footage film and work in progress about the Bandera cult. And again, Moss has been doing their homework on this. Here we go.
Start seeing about the Nazi hunt throughout the United States. We picked up on those books and we started looking every single one of those books. Guess what?
They've been all sorts of rumors. Oh yeah, they killed Poles. No, they killed Jews. No, they killed the Russians. No, they killed this. Guys.
They're trying to devastate us altogether in terms of our power. Today I'm going to be dealing with a subject that's rather sensitive in the Ukrainian community. This is Steven Wiesenthal. Now this is between us. We're all Ukrainians.
Simon Wiesenthal, the legendary Nazi hunter.
We're going to go after Wiesenthal also. Quietly. Not as a Jew, but as a Soviet agent, which is what he was. This
almost like a Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy.
And I will say this on camera. This SOB fought against our partisans.
They end up creating a partisan army. And I know that they've been all sorts of rumors. Oh yeah, they killed Poles. No, they killed Jews. No, they killed the Russians. No, they killed this. Guys.
But someday, if we can find some info on him and his relationship to Charlie Allen, so we can get back to Charlie Allen,
a journalist in the 1960s by the name of Chuck Allen. He had written these exhaustive exposés on the existence of Nazis in the United States. He also held rallies to draw attention to the problem.
Charlie would be one hell of a guy to get rid of because he had a lot of friends. Alan has done us more damage than any single person. We even have his address and telephone number. What do you think we should... No, not on camera. Not on camera.
Yeah, no shit.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to what is certainly going to be an informative and educational discussion about the situation evolving in the Ukraine.
But in writing about Ukraine and West Porter's responses to what was going on there, we realized that while many readers follow the news, most of us don't know much about the country itself. Tonight's session in this amazing space is a way for us to learn more about the history, the geography, and the culture that has led Ukraine to where it is today. And Walter Zaretsky is the perfect person to help us understand that. He's executive director of the Center for U.S.-Ukrainian Relations. It provides opportunities for senior-level political, economic, security, diplomatic, cultural, and academic experts in the U.S. and Ukraine to exchange views.
There's footage from an event in Winnipeg, and this is not a great feeling to know how immersed in nationalists we are here.
And undergraduate degrees from Columbia University, taught political science at NYU for nearly 3 decades.
It's really something that's been going on right under the surface, right under our noses.
2 questions.
Okay.
A couple of questions. It says, to what extent are charges of Ukrainian Nazism the result of what happened during World War II, when the Ukrainians treated the Germans as liberating them from Stalin's communism? That is, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That, you know, it's funny because I've gone over that period of history, and that has to be, man, when I look at Stalin's 2-year collaboration with Hitler and the 7-day collaboration with that supposedly the Ukrainians did, where do the Ukes stand in all this? Those crazy Ukes ended up, and everybody wants to know why they're doing partisan resistance, they end up creating a partisan army. And I know that they've been all sorts of rumors. Oh yeah, they killed Poles. No, they killed Jews. No, they killed the Russians.
Pretty
no,
flippant.
Guys, notice the Ukrainians are the only ones that did not have a puppet regime in World War II. So much for your Nazi collaboration. The Croatians might have ended up with those. The Norwegians ended up with those. Guess what? France, it's called Vichy France. Did you hear of a Ukrainian Vichy government? Now in 1941, there was a moment in which, as Hitler is moving, the underground moved and wanted to declare a government. June 30th, literally, 1941. And there was a whole bunch of stuff that, yeah, those Ukrainians, man, were moving in. They were Nazis because they were moving in.
In July 1941, the Germans advanced into the Ukraine, where they were greeted as liberators.
Well, within 6 days, I know because one of those was my grandfather, they were put under house arrest. Half of them, 2 months later, ended up in Sachsenhausen, in Mattenhausen. My father-in-law went blind in Mattenhausen.
Yeah, and to what you're saying, Diane AI, I agree. I don't think that Ukrainian is filled with Nazis, and I think we should acknowledge that. This is kind of one of the real tragedies of promoting this blend of nationalism that whitewashes the SS and that whitewashes Bandera and the violence of the UPN, is that it pisses on the legacy of the Ukrainians that did fight in the Red Army. Like, this is why we keep talking about this, because I think we should be upholding that tradition. We should be upholding the tradition of the Ukrainians that fought in the Red Army, that were proud parts of that socialist project. There are as Chrystia Freeland herself admitted, which is acknowledged in Michael Ignatieff's book. Duncan Kinney was talking about this. Like, millions of Ukrainians were proud parts of that legacy, that Soviet legacy of socialism and solidarity, and an important ally with Russia. And I think we should remember that. And that should be, and that is what's being completely erased. That history is being completely erased. And yet when someone like Putin says Ukraine's just filled top to bottom with Nazis, obviously it's not true. And I agree. We should absolutely acknowledge that. And we should not let that history, in the same way that this clean SS myth is being created and this revisionist history is being created, we should not allow their sacrifice to be forgotten either. And I think the people that promote this nationalist vision are the main culprits in that. I mean, a lot of these heroes that you're talking about, there's statues to them in Ukraine, and there's like streets named after them and important landmarks named after them, and they're all being taken down. They're changing the names of these streets. They're changing the names of these. They're taking away these statues, not of Russians, not statues of Russians, statues of Ukrainians. They're being actively erased. That legacy is being actively erased, and that's really, really criminal, I think.
And he was part of the underground. History has to separate itself because, there's stupidity. There has been stupidity. I said 17th century stupidity, ignorant serfs thing. Bozos in Western Ukraine who might have done something stupid in the
just a few bozos.
Unprovoked by anybody man in the underground. That's another thing. And that's evil and has to be condemned. But what can't be done is what they've done, which is that the movement itself was Nazi. Because that's where the falsification of history happens and why we're getting what we're getting.
This is the Azov Sea here and stuff. This is a bad version of Crimea. But he can do, here's Kiev.
Yeah.
This is one. So this is one of the things that the Americans learned. The Ukrainians are known for insurgencies, for
right.
That's why the Russians don't particularly like them. They've called them all sorts of
That's right. How many Ukrainians have fought in the Red Army are in Canada's parliament and they're giving standing ovations? That's right.
Anyway,
did we bring any of them in?
Not enough. So
after the war, no.
Variant, the overall invasion is an option, but he has 3 sub-variants. I'm trying to see. Pull the Ukrainian armies here from Kiev that are practicing now. And the thinking today is what he's done in the Duma, the Russian Duma, are regular troops in here saying that these have now united the same way as they did with Crimea.
Yeah.
If you have variant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what's playing out right now, what we believe is the other options have gotten a little pale. So what he's looking to is this splendid little victory, as someone on ABC called it today. And the splendid little victory. Can you imagine 1 million Ukes men telling Putin this?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that you're recording this.
Yes.
I hope you're not. I don't want that. And he may split the West because, and this is my last point, because I really do have to get going. He may want to split the intrusion and invasion. Most important thing is we don't want Washington to ever use that word again. Intrusion. If Russia.
Will speak for itself. Today I'm going to be dealing with a subject that's rather sensitive in the Ukrainian community.
Ukrainian newsreel and documentary film studios. No statute of limitations. Here they are, the own criminals who were in hiding for a long time from the people's wrath and justice.
We probably ourselves did not half believe
Do we want to
The
listen to
charges
those
we made
Ukrainians
10
that
years ago when
view
we
the
first heard
OUN
that
as being
there were countrymen of ours that
enemies
were being accused of being
and
Nazi
monsters?
collaborators, of being fascists from the World War II period.
Almost 40 years have gone by since that time when, as 20-year-olds, they committed their ghastly deeds, killed Ukrainians, Russians, Poles, and Jews. Blinded by nationalistic ideas and hatred for everything Soviet, they murdered innocent elderly men, women, and children.
At that time, we suspected somehow that there might be some interplay between that and some of the things that the Soviet Union was attempting to do in order to split us up as an immigrant community.
No, there can be no statute of limitations for crimes against humanity. In old Vyzhivka, in the Volyn region, the Soviet people have brought to trial Ukrainian bourgeois nationalism. Sergei Kovalchuk, who participated in the liquidation of 5,000 Jews in Lyubomel, now lives in the United States of America. Alexei Lewandowski posed in front of his victims in the Ternopil and Precarpathian areas. He also lives in America. He and his like are now among those who loudly claim they belong to committees, leagues, and associations. They are united by one thing, their vicious hatred of the Soviet socialist system.
But I don't think that any of us were quite sure that we had any proof. We also weren't quite sure of the people that were being accused at that time. Some of these people were relatively unknown to us, certainly the case of Ivan Demyanuk, who had been a very quiet auto worker in Cleveland, had really not participated much in the Ukrainian community in the first place, and so we weren't quite sure of who these people were.
Well, Ivan Demyanuk, John Demyanuk, was not an architect of the murder. He wasn't a desk murderer. He wasn't like Eichmann. He wasn't a commander of anything. He was a guard. And when we look at the Holocaust, one of the most important things to understand is how responsibility filters down through many levels of society. He represents an important
I think this is true
aspect
about
of
people that work in the American police state to this day as well. Look at the American prison system, and I think one day, it's not the exact same thing, obviously, but I think one day history will look at people that were involved in that with the same kind of through that same lens. They put the SS on the victim list? No, I thought that was a list of the perpetrators. The camp staff. Yeah, it's just a list of the camp staff, and it's 90 to 120 Ukrainian SS volunteers in the staff of this death camp.
Many levels of society. He represents an important aspect of the Holocaust, of the quote-unquote normal people who got involved in this, who became guards, but then lent a hand towards the murder of many, many thousands of people in his case, and ultimately to 6 million Jews.
But a PM trio, I mean, that's exactly when you have the Canadian Victims of Communism Foundation monument, like I was talking about. They do put fascist victims of violence on this monument. Not only are those kind of people funding the monument, but their names are being honored on the monument as well. That is literally what's happening in Canada right now.
In the case of Bohdan Kuji, more was known about him, but again, we weren't quite sure one way or another. We didn't have eyewitnesses. The World War II situation was rather devastating. Many of the people that would have known who had done what had been killed. So to some extent, I think we were stunned at first. Most Americans started believing, well, okay, the Ukrainians, yeah, paranoid about
sorry,
the
the
Soviet
side
situation.
note obviously is unrelated, but everyone in the 80s and 90s had one of those walls. Those walls. Did you grow up in one of those in your homes, folks? I had one of those walls in the house that I grew up in. It was very popular.
But on the other hand, don't you think that there are a couple of Nazis amongst you? Wouldn't you admit that? I mean, let's be real.
Yeah, let's.
Everybody had a couple of Nazis. You should have answered them at that point and stuff like that. Maybe there were a couple of Nazis in your family. But we didn't. Because to some extent, we were stunned by the counteroffensive they did. And we didn't really have proof. And then suddenly, man, like a whirlwind, the Demjanjuk case comes up. And suddenly, like the whirlwind, the Kouji case comes up. And suddenly we find ourselves, Demjanjuk is already being transported to Israel before he had actual trial, you know, before his trial made any sort of
This is when
sense here
Israel
in
was
the
still
United
doing
States.
stuff like this sometimes.
There were all sorts of weird setups, and Demjanjuk and Kouji essentially are railroaded in their cases. One ends up in Costa Rica before we have a chance to really create a serious defense, and one ends up in Israel under a death sentence, and what are we supposed to do with these people? And yet, in both cases, and I think that's how a group of us in New York, Ukrainians, got involved in this, and we came to the conclusions that we've now come and we're ready to give to the larger Ukrainian community.
Jewish Bolshevism, all right, was the underpinning of the Communist Party in Ukraine.
You can count on me. You're going to have good
Good
old
Lord.
Rob to talk you through all this.
All right?
There's a former president of the Ukrainian World Congress in 2016. Jewish Bolshevism, that's Nazi shit right there. Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy. Blur said, thank you for the 4 months tier 1. Thank you. Yeah, it's like when these folks are like, they think they're in private, they certainly seem to open up about a lot of these things. It used to be it used to be a little bit frowned upon to talk about that, but Jesus Christ, yeah, really spelling it out for everybody.
Was the underpinning of the Communist Party in Ukraine.
We started seeing...
Did the UCC put out a
with
statement about Hunka? That's a good question, Dakadoon. I haven't seen anything about it. It seems like they've just been pretending it's not going on. I'd be interested to see if they did, though.
In both the Demjanjuk case and the Kouji case. By the end, if you think that I'm absolutely nuts, we have people in Washington who now believe us and are ready to move on this. We actually
This is what Maz is trying to uncover here. There's this kind of Banderite cult that I think they're a minority of people, especially in Ukraine, but they have this huge influence over Canadian society and in the US government as well.
Proving that the case against us was a classic, not just Soviet, but a classic KGB psychological operation, an active measure of the highest caliber.
Russian active measures.
I'm going to finally say to everybody before everybody leaves, the fact is that we did spot someone who's very troubling. There are Russian trolls. They were working here in the United States. There's a character, an obnoxious character called Robeson that continues to say that the entire community is involved in the continuation of a neo-Nazi plot.
Hello, Dr. Lubomir Luchuk. Thank you so much for being here with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Today, I want to focus on one of the most controversial topics in history of Ukraine.
Ukrainians aren't Nazis, never were Nazis, and never will be Nazis. They fought against the Nazi Third Reich. They fought, however, as patriots. So when you hear the words Ukrainian nationalism, some people get very upset and they think that there's something wrong here. These are Nazi collaborators. No, they're not. We now know, based on KGB documents that we have found, that the Soviet Union deliberately provoked tension between Ukrainians and Jews, for example, in the diaspora, claiming that Ukrainians had collaborated in the Holocaust.
It's all
When in
Russian
fact, the evidence for
propaganda.
that is very, very minor.
This whole idea, don't look into it. It's all Russian propaganda.
The first clue, and I literally mean the first clue Marilyn Goldstein provided us with, is she says that the detective that was working on the case in the 70s, for Demjanjuk in the late 70s, early 80s, suggested that there was a list that was put out that was first given to the Justice Department and then to the OSI, and this list contained 73 Ukrainians, and that this list was the list that contained Demjanjuk's name. Okay? And someone from a left-wing Ukrainian-American newspaper, left-wing, pro-Soviet American, Ukrainian-American newspaper, had handed in this list, and Demjanjuk's name was on it. That was the first clue. The second clue was that Alan Ryan, in an interview with her, claimed that there was some great Ukrainian patriot who had,
OSI was World War II precursor to CIA, and under Allen Dulles, they too rescued and whitewashed a bunch of these SS guys and brought all these Nazis into the rat lines to escape around the world, and brought them into the intelligence community, and brought them into the U.S. as well in Operation Paperclip and Operation Sunrise.
On an entire write-up on Demjanjuk and send it to OSI in 80-81.
Yeah, no, Robo Gaming, I think you're right. OSS was the precursor to the CIA. So what is the OSI?
We didn't know who this was. We said pro-Soviet. It actually didn't even use the word pro-Soviet. It used left-wing Ukrainian-American newspaper. Well, I, as a Banderite, might have thought that Swoboda was a little left-wing, you know.
I, as a Banderite.
You know, Melnikites, Vikarites, and so on and so forth. But I said, no, but that's not left-wing. And they wouldn't betray a Ukrainian.
Thousands of far-right Ukrainians have marked the 106th anniversary of the birth of controversial nationalist Stepan Bandera. He fought Russian and Polish occupation in Ukraine in the first part of the 20th century. They chant glory to Stepan Bandera. Glory, 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 they chant. Bandera is considered a hero by some, but denounced as a World War II Nazi collaborator by others.
84 Munich, 25th anniversary of Bandera's death. Crazy. And so, like, that's it. It's like when we're talking about, as we've talked about a lot, this kind of fascist influence in Ukrainian nationalism. And people say, oh, it's this minor element of the military. It's a couple of these yahoos with Azov battalion running around, who are also okay, by the way, because they're killing Russians right now. But this is why I think it's important to learn this, because it goes way beyond that. And it's deeply embedded in the entire sort of ideology that they've promoted, that they've now kind of successfully grafted onto this modern version of Ukrainian nationalism, which is full anti-Russian, anti-Soviet, completely disregarding that whole legacy. Okay, thanks, low observable goat. The Office of Special Investigations was established in 1979 within the U.S. Department of Justice. Its task consisted of processing the accumulated cases and the resumption of the search for war criminals in the United States. Yeah, it's interesting that there has been, like, you have like the OSS and the CIA bringing Nazis into the country, and that's happening all like in Canada and elsewhere. And then you have this effort too, like there's legitimately people within the state. There's different factions of the state, and you have some factions that are trying to get to the bottom of that and figuring it out. But ultimately, it seems we can see which faction actually won over the actual whatever anti-fascist faction that there was in the state in either the U.S. or Canada. Overall, they gradually just like lost whatever institutional power they had to carry on this like search, and eventually just this process of historical revisionism and rehabilitation has just continued, with no one really saying anything about it.
East German communist woman won his heart over. So she writes.
And this guy
book in
admits,
tribute.
this is a speech in Calgary in the 80s. We looked at Bandera and the support for Bandera, and this guy is self-admitted Banderite, you know, and talking about all the influence that they have in the Canadian state and in the U.S. government.
Tribute to him, I guess. Now, this book, written for the left-wing circuit, not thinking, man, that the right wing or the center wing or even good left-wingers like me who've turned right because of reading this stuff might read this, she reveals a great deal about Charlie Allen. Who is Charlie Allen, and what kind of damage did he do to us? First, Charlie Allen started his crusade against the Nazis in the United States as early as the 1950s. He got his first list from two characters called Morris Shapps and Chaim Schuler, both of whom worked for Jewish communist newspapers. It says so. And Allen had been writing
Jewish
for the Nation
communist
at that
newspapers.
Time. A left-wing journal, but nothing that we could prove had commie connections and so on. But he got involved with Chaim Schuler and Shapps, and he took the list from them. But when he took the list from them, must have been something wrong, because he must have taken something more from them, because the FBI in 1957 and 1958 have got a file on him. In 1957 and 58 already, it seems as though, man, he had made a connection with the communists. And the FBI had a file on him, and guess why in
seriously, partying,
1962
kind of
we
telling
did not
on
have the
himself.
Nazi hunt? Because in 1962, when Charlie Allen first submitted his list of 16, on which you find Carlos Linus, in that first list already, 30 years ago, Charlie Allen was turned down by Bobby Kennedy because Bobby Kennedy thought he was probably a communist. Can you imagine a liberal Democrat like Bobby Kennedy calling someone a communist? He must have been a goddamn
Yeah, everyone was fucking anti-communist.
Ms. Holtzman calls together a subcommittee.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. That's what a lot of this speech and this argument is about. Just talking about how unfair it is that there was people institutionally going after these Nazi war criminals, defending each and every one of them, and suggesting all this information is coming from Jewish communists. Right? That's basically what it is. This is all just a big smear campaign from Russia and really from the Jews. Like, that's ultimately what the culprit is, who he openly talks about a couple times, but it's really only suggested. But that's like what the point is.
On immigration and naturalization, and from that subcommittee, she wants more testimony to prove that we need a Nazi hunting unit with teeth, more money, $2.5 million more dollars, and with 18 lawyers and 36 researchers. How's a Diminuka or Kuji going to stand up against that? Something called the Office of Special Investigation. Never passed legislatively, created administratively. How? Because she creates this subcommittee.
So this Banderite just seems really interested in discrediting these Nazi investigations and framing them as being part of a Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy, almost as if he is a Nazi himself.
Read the book and weep. We said to ourselves, Jesus Christ. Charles Allen, a known agent. The FBI was after him in the 50s. The CIA for 10 years. Romerstein admitted...
My friend Herb Romerstein wrote about it.
Romerstein admitted to us, man, in Washington this last week that they've known Charlie Allen was bad news from 1951.
And he also then qualified it and backed us in the 80s and said, guys, 7 days might have been some, they walked in.
By the end, if you think that I'm absolutely nuts, we have people in Washington who now believe us and are ready to move on this.
That's all the time we have for today, folks. Maybe we can pick up this thread on Monday. Or Monday, it might be a holiday. Am I coming back Monday? I don't know. Who knows? Who knows if I'm going to. I do have to go, though. I have to go. Before I go, folks, if there's anyone else that wants to subscribe to TRRS, now is the chance to do it. Especially if I'm not going to be here on Monday. Even more important that that happens. So if you can, please, folks, help me make my little number go up. Help me finish the week strong. Subscribe to TRRS. It's $5 or completely free of charge. If you have an Amazon Prime account, you can easily transition that into a Twitch Prime sub. Support the show, support the community, support the work I do, and become a member of Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. It's been a magnificent week of streaming. Thank you, Dr. Awesome. Happy Thanksgiving to you. It's Canadian Thanksgiving, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving to even the haters and losers. So is there one? Do we hear 20? Is there one person? Is there one hero that's going to allow me to end this stream on a positive note? One hero could step to the plate now and at least get to 20 subs for the day, which I would call a win. I would consider that a win, and it's only one person. Only one person it's going to take. One hero. One brave TRRS community member could come through here.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob
Navi of
to
Destiny.
talk you through all this.
Very first gifted sub in the channel from Navi of Destiny. I really appreciate that, and I support the Navi people as well, and I see you. And I appreciate the gifted subscription. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I think I will be back on Tuesday, folks, unless maybe on the weekend some gaming stuff could happen. We'll see. I'm not sure, but I'll be back soon. If you're not in the Discord, please join the Discord server. Really great stuff. We've got more spooky movies coming up. I believe Sunday night is Evil Dead. Sunday night is Evil Dead. Thank you, Crackety Kraken. That's right. So please join the Discord server. We got Evil Dead. We got lots of other spoopy movies this week, this month. Some great spoopy movie programming. I can't believe I'm just unironically saying spoopy. Like, what the hell is that? What the hell's going on? We got theory reading groups. We got all kinds of great discussion and channels and wonderful stuff going on in the TRRS Discord server. So thank you again for watching. Give my regards to our friend, Dan Simpson. John McCain's Ghost is hosting. It is very spooky. Thanks, folks. See you soon.